wanted to go through a couple of housekeeping items for folks here tonight. As always, we have a copy of or extra copies of the agendas of tonight's meetings on the back table under the big clock by the back door. Should have enough copies, hopefully, for everybody who needs one to follow along with the meeting. We do also have one copy, complete set of all the meeting materials in a binder for people to share from the public as you need to refer to the materials that we're considering this evening. Would ask folks if you have a cell phone to make sure and silence it, or otherwise assure that it doesn't disrupt our meeting this evening. I did want to also note, as far as public comment, and I'll go through much more of the specifics of the rules of the road for public comment, but we do have several opportunities for public comment this evening, not the least of which is coming up very soon here, which is our general public comment at the beginning of the meeting, which is on items that are not on this evening's agenda. We will provide public comment opportunities on agenda items as they come up. So just to clarify for folks who are here maybe for a particular item that we're taking up this evening, that the period of time for comment on that particular item will be during its consideration rather than during the general public comment. Hopefully that's helpful for folks in understanding. And in fact, one of our items this evening is a public hearing, the 7C, which is related to a minor plat. And so the public hearing, the whole purpose of that is to hear public comment from people in the community about that proposal. And so that will be the appropriate time for members of the public to speak to that item. With that, we would just ask folks to stand, if you're able, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next on our agenda this evening is to consider approving the agenda. And I'll check, as we always do, first with City Manager Trudgeon. Is there any changes to the agenda from a staff perspective this evening?
Mr. Mayor, staff has no changes to the agenda.
All right, and I'll check with council members. Do council members have any changes or request any items be removed from consent for separate consideration? Councilmember Strong.
I'd like to request 10F be removed from the consent agenda.
All right, to consider it separately. Got
Yes,
it.
thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll move that one earlier in the meeting. Boy, it's been so long since we've done that, I have to remember where they go. All right, we got it. All right. And then we will check with members of the public as well. So what Councilmember Strawn just referred to was an item in Section 10 of our agenda, which is known as the consent agenda. Those items are taken up at the end of the meeting, and they're usually fairly administrative in nature and all taken as a single motion with limited opportunity for input. But if you happen to be here this evening for an item that's in Section 10 of our agenda this evening, this would be an opportunity to let us know, and we can move that item earlier in the meeting for your comment or question. Is there anyone here for an item in Section 10, which is known as our consent agenda, items A through M right now? It does not appear to be the case. So with that, then a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the movement of item 10F to separate consideration would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Strawn. Discussion on that motion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. That passes unanimously 4-0. We have our agenda for this evening. And just before we move to the next item on the agenda, I should note I forgot to make introductions. As part of the roll call portion of the agenda, I should note that we have our City Attorney Rachel Tierney, who's on my right at the end of the dais, not quite as far to the end as usual, and our City Manager Pat Trudgeon on my left at the other end, also not as far away as usual. With that, those introductions out of the way, then, we have our first opportunity for public comment during the meeting this evening, and that is, once again, general public comment. This would be related to items that are not on tonight's agenda for council consideration, but may be of interest to people in the community or related to city business, once again, that we're not considering this evening. Is there anyone here tonight for general public comment? All right, feel free to have a seat. And while you're taking a seat, I just want to note for members of the public the rules of the road for public comment. By council rule, we do have a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which I try to enforce generously and gently. And then also one opportunity per agenda item to speak per speaker, which shouldn't be too hard for this agenda item. We also do want comments and questions directed to the council, as opposed to sort of a conversation amongst members of the public here. And also, if we can't happen happen to address a comment or a question tonight, we often will address that, be followed up with either the resident or whomever as appropriate, just so that we can receive the information or the comment or the question and then see if we need to act on it later. I believe that's everything on the rules of the road. So just introduce yourself with your name and your street or address for the record, and we'll begin with the first gentleman who's here to make comment.
Hi, my name's Mike Gregory. I live at 1945 Sharondale Avenue. And can you see this piece of paper? That,
If there's kind of a lighter area on the table, sort of to your
Yep.
right in front of you, that may be available for that overhead camera. I'm not sure if we can get the overhead camera in the control room.
It's up. It's on. Just
It's up.
slide it forward, Mike.
a little.
okay,
Okay, we're not seeing it on our screens. Is it on any of the
It's over on
screens?
that side.
We've got one screen that's showing it.
Is it
Okay,
good?
there we
No, it's
go.
over there.
All right, that's what we needed, and then they should be able to zoom it in, hopefully.
well, okay. Gonna get it away from, there we go. Get away from the microphone. There we go.
All right.
Thank you. I'm Mike Gregory, 1945 Sharondale Avenue, Roseville, Minnesota. I was here a few weeks ago with Do Good Roseville and a number of the not-for-profits. We were talking about Roseville Cares and making an impact in our community. Well, with the Operation Metro Surge, it's brought our community together like never before. So with over 350 people who are addressing food for people who are afraid to leave their homes and send their kids to school, and 252 people who are volunteered to be at every bus stop, with at least 3 people at every bus stop. A group met here on February 2nd. 23 people met here, including 9 religious organizations. And we said, what can we do relative to rents? Because that's a very major issue and people are going to be evicted. So when we met, we didn't have a particular group available to be the financial agent, but St. Michael's Lutheran Church said, we will be the financial agent for money coming in, and we will disperse money out based on the social workers in the city and the social workers from the school system, all 7 grade schools, middle school, and high school. And from that, we've helped over 60 families so far. And with this Metro Surge, Operation Metro Surge, we think it's going to be needed well beyond February. We're already making assistance in March, and we think we'll probably be doing it all the way through April. So what I'm going to read is what's on this sheet of paper, and this says, this is for the Roseville Housing Stability Fund. Love pays the rent. Due to the ICE activity known as Operation Metro Surge, residents of Roseville and the Roseville School District communities are facing housing insecurity. Donating to this fund allows the school and community social workers to help households maintain stability until the dangers of Operation Metro Surge no longer prevent people from earning an income and paying housing costs. Even though officially it's been reduced, that's going to be around for a while. If you wish to send funds via a donor-advised fund or other avenue, please direct them to St. Michael's Lutheran Church, 1660 County Road B, West, Roseville, Minnesota, 55113. Special instructions on the memo line, Roseville Housing Stability Fund. And we have St. Michael's EIN is 41-0835898. Needs are assessed through Roseville Community Social Workers, and funds are sent directly to creditors, never to households. So we don't know who they are. We're just putting the checks together and sending them out to the proper locations with a memo, whatever it needs to be there. And we noted that we have Zephy, that's on the bottom of this thing. And Zephy is a way you can donate directly. It doesn't cost anything, and again, all those funds are going to go for housing and or for food. So I just want to let you know what we're doing in the community. It's making a very positive impact, and Roseville Cares is indeed what this shows. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here tonight and providing that information.
I guess I do want to make one other comment, and that was that you can also donate to Roseville Area Schools Foundation, and they also are helping with a similar technique with kids in the schools. Okay, thank you.
If you hadn't said it, I was just about to, so thank you. All right. Yes, good indication of how people in Roseville are helping out their neighbors. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak under general public comment this evening? All right. Seeing no one else, then we'll proceed with our agenda as it unfolds here. And the first item under recognitions and donations is a proclamation related to Women's History Month. And we'll read the proclamation, and then a motion to approve would be in order. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas throughout history, extraordinary women have made significant contributions to the growth and strength of our city, state, and nation in countless ways, and whereas through leadership, innovation, and ingenuity, generations of women have made significant contributions in science, medicine, technology, business, politics, entrepreneurship, and culture in many other ways, And whereas women have been leaders in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, and in the abolitionist, emancipation, industrial labor, civil rights, and peace movements, creating a more fair and just society for all. And whereas whether serving in elected positions across America, leading groundbreaking civil rights movements, venturing into unknown frontiers, or programming revolutionary technologies, generations of women that knew their gender was no obstacle to what they could accomplish have long stirred new ideas and opened new doors, having a profound and positive impact on the community. Whereas, despite their contributions, the role of women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in literature, education, science, and culture. And whereas the theme for Women's History Month 2026 is Leading the Change, Women Shaping a Sustainable Future, this theme honors the women who have and are reimagining and rebuilding systems to ensure long-term sustainability, whether it's environmental, economic, educational, and societal. It recognizes the powerful leadership of women in creating a future that is rooted in equity, justice, and opportunity for all. Today, we celebrate countless pioneering women and their victories, and we continue to work to build a society where our daughters have the same possibilities as our sons. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the City of Roseville declares March 2026 to be Women's History Month in the city.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Bauer. Discussion on the motion. I just did want to note that in the first whereas it says extraordinary women, and I would add that even women who might not otherwise be considered extraordinary by the general public have made extraordinary contributions, and so I wanted to add that to what we're recognizing here this evening. I don't know if there's other comment from council members.
I just want to say, indeed, we have to remember, especially when there are times when we are attacked in all kinds of venues. It's good to remember that we continue to need to fight for the rights that we have, and thank to so many of the women in our history who are our voting, the people who run the voting booths. And they're not exclusively women, but so many that are led, churches, women. There's just so many avenues that our city especially is indebted to the volunteer hours and time, and our schools to people who feel that need, and often they are women. I think that sometimes they're just unsung, as the mayor said. They're the ordinary people who do some extraordinary things.
Right, other discussion on the motion? I think the only other thing I'll add is just echoing what was said earlier, that there's been a significant involvement of women in recent efforts in Minnesota in relation to Operation Metro Surge, and certainly that's part of what we recognize this evening, and always. With that, we've got the motion before us. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously 4-0. That proclamation is approved. That brings us then to items removed from consent, and we do have the one item 10F, which relates to an agreement with J&M Display for fireworks for the Rose Fest party in the park. And I'll have Mr. Trudgeon introduce that item for our consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You took the words out of my mouth. It's a pretty straightforward case. It's entering into an agreement with J&M Display for a fireworks display on June 27, 2026 as part of the Party in the Park and Rose Fest activities in the amount of $20,000.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. And Councilmember Strawn, you had asked this item to be removed for separate consideration.
Yes, thank you. For the last few years, we've had extensive comment near the fireworks asking if we would consider other ways to have some type of celebration, either a light show or other things that recognize the people who struggle with the sound and kind of the trauma. And we've had a traumatic spring, so our winter or whatever season we're still in. So I just wanted to make sure that we had addressed either with the Parks Department or with others to just see if there's any other options that we might have either this year or just, as Mr. Johnson knows, I continue to bring this up annually. And so just knowing, at least for the public's sake, what the comparison in pricing would be if we were to consider a drone show or other non-firework type productions that would be of equal or similar value to our city. So I wanted to make sure before we just approved what this was for the year going forward that we knew whether or not other items had been addressed.
Right, and I see our Parks and Rec Director, Matt Johnson, here to perhaps shed some light on that question.
Yeah, Thank you, council member and mayor. This is something we do look at annually, and we have looked at, I guess, globally. Most recently, our analysis was roughly 3 times the cost, so in the neighborhood of about $60,000 to do a drone show. Within the last few weeks, we've become aware that one of our neighboring communities is trying a drone show, and their budget is more in line with ours. I don't know what that number is, but we don't have really any information. It's quite out of line with what we've heard from other cities that are doing it. So I think if it goes well, it's certainly worthy of consideration in the future. I'm not sure that it would be something that we would do this year, but we are constantly looking at it. We are also aware of other communities where they've kind of gone on the front end of that and gotten some pretty poor results. So we want to be thoughtful and intentional in that. But yes, we have multiple times looked into it, and the cost is multiple times what fireworks display is.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for taking that time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. All right, are there any other questions from council members on this item this evening? All right.
Motion to approve
All
the
right.
item.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Groff to approve the agreement on the fireworks for 2026 as outlined. Discussion on the motion as the maker of the motion, Councilmember Strawn.
No.
Right, is the seconder Councilmember Groff.
Well, I would like to thank Councilmember Strawn for bringing this forward. It is something you hear about some. I think it would deserve further study before we made a change, because most people I talk to like the fireworks, so it would be a big change for Roseville. So I think going forward this year and looking at it down the road in the future would be worthwhile.
Right, other discussion on the motion? I think the only thing I'd add to that is that we are pretty good about having public processes to make these types of changes, and so hopefully that would be something that would be part of it if we do look to make a change going forward. With that, we've got the motion before us to approve the contract for the fireworks for 2026. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously 4-0. We have that item approved. All right, and that brings us then to our business items for tonight. Our first business item is to consider the Cities for Safe and Stable Communities Coalition. And I think, Mr. Treasurer, maybe you're introducing this item, and then I know we've got a special guest with us this evening.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the City Council and the community has been grappling with Operation Metro Surge, we have been talking about a lot of actions the city could take. You will recall at our last meeting on February 9th, we did talk about the recently formed Cities for a Safe and Stable Community Coalition, which was a collaborative group of Minnesota cities advocating for public safety approaches that respect the constitutional rights while supporting community stability and local governance during this whole Operation Metro Surge. Originally, 12 cities came together: Bloomington, Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, Columbia Heights, Eden Prairie, Edina, Golden Valley, Hopkins, Maplewood, Minnetonka, Richfield, and St. Louis Park. In my understanding, there's probably over 30 cities, perhaps more, now that are part of that coalition. City Council did have a discussion on that and felt that there was maybe a need for some additional discussion and perhaps bring forward somebody that is part of that coalition to answer any questions that the council may have. Once again, it's really formed around 3 core principles: safety over partisanship, economic stabilization, and local control and constitutional rights. As part of their efforts, they have hired a firm to help them message and organize around the topic here, and that is a contract with Momentum Advocacy. While it's not totally clear to me if we were to be part of the coalition, there might be some need of a cost share as part of that, as all the cities would share in the cost. Given the amount of folks that are, or cities that are involved here, it'd be pretty minimal, probably under $2,000. But so with that, the information is in your packet. We are fortunate to have Richfield Mayor Mary Supple here tonight to answer any questions you have. As mentioned, Richfield was one of the founding members of this coalition and certainly is able to answer any questions that you may have. So I will turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
All right. And welcome, Mayor Supple. Thank you for being here this evening on the other side of town. We appreciate that. I don't know if you've got any information you want to share at the outset, or just stand for questions, or what you've prepared for this evening.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank you, Mayor Rowe, and members of the council for giving us this opportunity to talk with you. We joined together because we thought unified we'd have a bigger voice, and we wanted to make sure that the voices of our residents were heard. And so it's a nonpartisan coalition, and I think speaking as 20 plus cities, you get a much bigger impact than if just one city spoke by themselves. And so that's why we wanted to go ahead and do that. We currently have over 20 cities, and there are about 15 councils doing exactly what you're doing. And so at the moment, we're representing over 500,000 residents. And so that's why it's a stronger voice when we come together, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. Questions from the council? Councilmember Bauer.
Thank you so much for coming this evening. In here, I see the list of your core principles. I was wondering if you've had a chance to figure out what the current asks are that are being made through this, and where those asks are being made to, or who those asks are being made to.
So that has kind of shifted with the announcement that they're saying that the surge is over, but we know that the impact is carrying on, and we don't know for sure what's going to be happening in the future, but we do know that we are going to need some economic stabilization. And things like housing stability, like was mentioned in your open forum earlier, helping businesses. We have a number of businesses that have had a great deal more impact than during COVID. So some of them have had 50 to 100% of their operating income taken away. And so we want to make sure that we are reaching out to both the state and the federal government to see if we can find ways to help stabilize our communities. So we are talking with Governor Walz on Wednesday. We talked with Senator Smith. We're reaching out to individual legislators, and we're trying to have a nonpartisan, broad-based coalition to say, hey, we need to do something to stabilize things. And so that's been the main focus right now. But we also need to, we want to talk about the fact that because of some of this, we have to restore some trust, because I know our public safety officials have worked for years to build trust, and now this has really had a big impact on that. So there's a lot of things like that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Strawn.
Thank you. And thank you to you for being here. Your city has been hit particularly hard by Operation Metro Surge, and we stand with you and respect all that you've had to do. So thank you. I see in the paperwork that the end date proposed is May 30th, 2026. Do you see that would be a time frame that we'd be able to get any substantive things done? Obviously, it's the end of this particular session, but do you see it maybe being more of a long term, or is it just right now that we're concentrating on?
Well, when we put the coalition together, we weren't sure how long it was going to last. That's why when the city manager mentioned we don't know the exact cost, obviously if it goes longer, it'll cost more, but if, because we have to pay for the consulting services and those types of things. So we put in there to the end of the legislative session, hoping that the state would help us out and help some of the cities to stabilize things. But we could agree as a coalition to continue at that point. So it's kind of fluid at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think it's clear.
All right. I did have Councilmember Schroeder is not here this evening. She did ask a couple of questions and asked me to pass them along. She did have a question about some of the coalition management work that the consultant does, referencing things like strategy adjustment based on public sentiment, which I think you've related a little bit of that just in terms of changing focus, and then the use of AI tools to optimize content, and some of the logistics of the messaging and how that impact is driven by the work of the consultant. I don't know if you can talk a little bit about those topics.
So when we were first coming together, the first thing the consultant did is pulled us together, the cities that were working, to come up with what would be the consistent messages. And then we adjusted after the Border Czar Holman announced he was going to end Operation Metro Surge, and we made adjustments for those type of things. So one of the things we said is that these are kind of our core messages, and we're hoping others will join us in them, because it gets kind of messy if every time a new city comes on, you have to switch up your messaging. And so I think it's one of those things, like every Wednesday morning, there's a Zoom call of the mayors to talk about what we're going to do going forward. And then the city managers also have a Zoom call that they meet, so we can guide what that messaging is. And then we try and have a consistent message, so we have the most impact if somebody, like 2 of the mayors were on Almanac and another mayor talked to NPR. And so we want to make sure that it's a consistent message. And I think there was one other question, but you'll have to remind me what it is.
Well, I think there was an interest in understanding how the AI tools were used, but I'm not sure that I could answer that question.
I'm not sure either. I know they do come together with talking points and stuff, and I'm assuming some of that has to do with putting together the talking points.
Got it.
But I don't know I honestly don't know for sure how that
Sure.
works.
And I appreciate you mentioning the Wednesday morning Zoom calls. So that's kind of the governance. It's not much more formalized than that, probably, I'm guessing.
Right, it's more of a consensus and discussion type thing.
Got it. All right. Thank you. Other questions? All right. Well, thank you for being here and for being part of initiating this effort. And hopefully we can be joining you shortly here.
All right, thank you so much.
And if other questions do come up, I hope you'll stand by for a little while. And of course, you're always welcome to stay for the rest of our council meeting, because I'm
But you
sure
don't have
you're
to.
way into these topics.
We have ours tomorrow night, so thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, before we move to council consideration, we do want to provide an opportunity for public comment on this item as it's before us this evening. And just to remind folks, once again, we've got the 3-minute time limit per speaker. Please address questions or comments to the council. We do ask that you introduce yourself by name and street or address as you're comfortable as you begin your comments. If you have a name that I might not be able to guess the spelling of, we do have a clipboard off to the side, and so when you finish your comments, you can kind of just step off to the side and write out your name just to make sure we get it right in the official record. And certainly if there's several people that want to speak, we do have the 2 microphones, and so feel free to sit at the unused mic while the previous person is speaking, and then we can switch back and forth a little more quickly in that way. I think that covers everything. Oh, and 1 opportunity per agenda item per speaker. With that, we'll open up for public comment on this item as we're considering it this evening. All right. Going once, going twice. All right. Hello and welcome.
Hi, Carrie Gelly. I live near Highway 36 and Dale Street. I'm surprised more of my community members didn't just jump right up along with me, but I'm just here to encourage you to vote in favor of joining the coalition. And I think there's a lot of benefit that could be gained by joining the residents of Roseville's voices with the city, with all these other cities. And I understand that timeline. It just seems like if we could vote on it tonight and get it approved tonight, we are part of the conversation with Governor Walz on Wednesday then. And then as far as the length of time, if we're asking the state legislature to support us, and some of the actions from the coalition are through the legislative session, maybe there's a world where the coalition persists beyond the time that the consultancy is hired. I don't know, but I guess, supposedly the operation is drawing down, but we don't know what other crisis might face us in the future. And maybe this coalition could be something that would support us through other needs down the road. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I knew if we got the ball rolling, we'd have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, y'all seemed broadly in favor of it, so I was like, yeah. But hi, I'm Andy Johnson. I live over by Acorn Park on Rice and C. Wooers. It's a weird road. Also, speaking in favor of it, it seems like a really good idea. I like the notion that maybe somehow the network you could create there could live on for sort of advocacy going forward. Sort of 500,000 people, stronger voice, is very good like that. I think maybe my only critique is I just really would love a lot of talking about the individual people that are suffering and having their lives completely upended, which I know we're getting. I just feel I was reading a news article and it was sort of safety is this umbrella, and then a lot of focus on the suffering businesses, which they're suffering, and that's fine. But I just think, maybe for me the most compelling part is the people that are locked in their houses for kind of an indeterminate time. You could tell me it's done and there's no more ice agents left, and if I were a vulnerable person, I wouldn't believe you, and I don't know what would get me out of my house. So I really think you're looking at like the rest of 2026 or something. Like, am I feeling better in 2020? I guess, how do the midterms go? I don't know. It just seems like a real bleak time for a lot of people, and I just want to wasn't focused on that. But overall, great idea. Absolutely should do it. I hope more people join in. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening? All right. We'll go ahead and close the opportunity for public comment then on this item and proceed to council consideration. Thoughts from the council? Councilmember Strawn?
I'd like to move that we join the Cities for Safe and Stable Communities, and with the expenditure up to $3,000 as indicated, or whatever the request is at this time, to get us through this session, and then address after that, should it move forward past that time.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Groff to join the coalition. Discussion on the motion. As the maker of the motion, Councilmember Strawn.
Nothing further.
All right. As the seconder, Councilmember Groff.
Well, I think it's been said, I think many voices are heard more than just individuals, and many cities joined together are going to get more attention than just one city. So that's why I'm voting for this. I think it's a good idea. It's a very cost-effective use of money from the residents, and I look forward to hearing more from the coalition.
All right. Other discussion on the motion, Councilmember Bauer.
Addressing something stated during public comment, we do also work with other groups such as League of Minnesota Cities to push forward agendas that include all city voices, not just these in the metro. I think this works well because of the targeted focus on the metro area for something like this. So I think this is a good idea.
All right. And to make sure we do address the comment during public comment as well. It's certainly a huge part of the impact is impact on individuals. And I think when we talk about impacts on businesses, certainly it's oftentimes small businesses that may be one or two individuals, and certainly that's a huge impact to them. And if it's a few more employees, that's a huge impact to those people too. A lot of times the impact to business is the result of those employees not being able to leave their home and not being able to trust that it's a safe situation. And so certainly that is important to acknowledge as part of this. But I think all of the efforts that we'd be advocating for would be to help people in this community as well as across the broader Twin Cities area that have been impacted. And so I think that's really a good thing to be focusing on. And so that's why I'm supportive of the motion as well. With that, we've got the motion before us to join the coalition as outlined. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously 4-0, and we are now officially joining the coalition. Thank you again, everybody, for following this, and thank you again to the Mayor of Richfield. All right, with that, then we move to our second item on our business agenda this evening, which is item 7B, and that is to consider authorizing proceeding with planning for a possible nature play addition at the Heritage Alexander Nature Center, as well as acceptance of a donation to fund a study. And we have our Parks and Rec Director, Matt Johnson, with us this evening to bring this item before the council for our consideration. Welcome, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council, and I apologize for a very wordy agenda item title. I worked it, and that's what I landed on. So we do have what I think is a pretty exciting opportunity here, and it's really grown over the past, I'd say, 4 or 5 months from a pea-sized snowball to something that's really gathering steam and heading down the mountain. So it was a great time to come and chat in and to understand where the council is at with it. So as always, I like to give a little bit of context before I get into the meat of the issue. And that is today I want to talk about the Harriet Alexander Nature Center. This is obviously located in Central Park on 52 acres of preserved natural space. The Visitor Center annually has more than 10,000 visitors. More than 1,600 volunteer hours take place at the Nature Center. More than 100 school field trips were there last year, and more than 3,000 recreation programs. More so, the spirit of the Nature Center has always been one of volunteerism and community-focused donations. The center itself was constructed partly, in part, based on a generous contribution from Harriet Alexander, as well as the Roseville Central Park Foundation. And as I mentioned, 1,600 volunteer hours staff that facility 6 days a week. So we only have one full-time staff member that is there. So it's tremendously community-based. In addition to that is the Interpretive Center. The Nature Center grounds has many times over that many users on the boardwalks, as well as the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, which is also on the grounds. We've seen pretty consistent increases in program participation and annual usage counts the past few years, and partly because, and as a result of, we have chosen to invest in that site. You'll recall 2 years ago we had 3 mosaic cairns done by local artist Lori Green that were installed on site. Those have been tremendously popular, and the idea was to get people to come visit the site, see the facility. We also had these 2 10-foot tall monolith signs that were installed. These were envisioned in 2016, so long before I was in this role, and fully donation funded as well, and finally installed last year, and have been a tremendous success again at getting people to know the nature centers back there, as well as providing some wayfinding for the facility. Additionally, with some capital improvement program dollars, this past year we were able to re-side the building, update the facade and the exterior signage. I should have done a before and after facility because it's picture because it's almost unrecognizable how different and clean it looks with that on there. But really, what I want to illustrate is how this has really over time been a joint donor and city effort in every aspect of it. Realistically, as long as I've been here in Roseville, one thing that we've heard about at the Nature Center, initially sort of on the periphery, but growing louder over the years, has been a request for a nature playground. And when I talk about a nature playground, what I mean is a play space that's a combination of synthetic as well as natural elements that's really geared towards connecting its users to the natural spaces. And this has really, over the last, I'd say, 6 to 8 years, become more prevalent in the parks and recreation world. And simply because it's viewed as a key antidote to technology addiction, anxiety, some of the things that we know are impacting our children now. And there's been a lot of studies around just being in nature, not necessarily playing, just being in nature is a great counteraction to those things. And we talk about that a lot when we talk about why we plant trees and why we do parks and recreation programs. But this really is, for lack of a better term, almost a trick to get kids to come out and fall in love with nature. They come out because they want to play. They come out because that looks really fun. And we hope that over time, they also fall in love with the environment around them. They fall in love with sustainability and conservation. And that's something that will keep them healthy throughout adulthood as they transition into maybe less playground activities and more into sustainability activities. So again, this is something we've heard about quite a bit over time. This started to, I guess I wouldn't say grow legs, but at least become something we wanted to look into more in 2024 when we were approached by both Friends of Roseville Parks members as well as the Roseville Central Park Foundation, just saying, what would this look like? And we didn't really know. We didn't have an idea what it would cost, how it would come together. So initially, what we as staff went out and we toured some nature playgrounds in the metro area that we had heard were good. I think we ended up touring about 6 of them. Some were really great. Some didn't fit what we were trying to do. The pictures to my left are on the screen were Springbrook Nature Center. This is in Fridley. And as you can see, this is a great illustration of what I'm talking about, where there's natural elements in there. These are all synthetic in the picture, but there are some rocks behind. This is looks like a beaver, but it's all made out of wood. These are actually concrete sculpted mushrooms and turtles. And this thing is 2 giant 9-foot tall platforms with a lever in between, where a kid or an adult get on that lever and they swing from platform to platform. Some of our staff did it and said it was scary as heck. I was in the scary as heck, not willing to do it contingent, and I felt very alone about that until today when I was going over my slides and my daughter, who is 9, looked over my shoulder and she said, "Dad, I've been there and I didn't do that." And I said, all right, we're on the same page, and I had no idea she had been there. This is one that is far larger than what we're talking about here, but very, very popular. I'm sure you've all heard about the Tamarack Nature Center in White Bear Township. Again, a combination of natural elements such as the rocks you see in the left picture, as well as synthetic but made to look natural elements such as the hut on the right. And then the one that we found that really was quite inspiring to us was Graham's Park in Sherburne County. And I've got a few quick slides I'll buzz through about Graham's Park, but you can see again on the left, if you look at the little guy in the green or blue shirt here, he's on synthetic lily pads, but also here you've got some huts built with natural sticks. On the right, you've got, again, wood-based construction with pea gravel. My favorite element that I've seen at all these places is this is actually a culvert that is put in and buried about a third into the ground, leveled out, and they put rocks and natural grass on top, and it becomes a tunnel that kids can ride their bikes or run through. They run all over it. They're all over the place there. And these are a couple of other elements. These are actually synthetic and painted by an artist to look like birch trees that can be climbed on. Birch is typically not something you want to climb on because you will ruin the tree. And again, you can kind of see here you've got stick-based swings, but also very natural elements. So we went and saw those sites, and now we're getting into my timeline of my narrative. We went and saw those sites and thought, boy, this maybe is interesting. We need to find out how much this costs and what it would look like. So we invited some vendors, kind of your typical playground vendors that said they had a natural play line to come out to the nature center last spring and summer. And we had them come out, and ultimately it kind of felt like a square peg in a round hole. They pretty much were trying to sell us playgrounds that were painted to look like nature, and we thought, boy, we're in this tremendously natural space. We're going to ruin it if we put something like this in there. And so we backed off and thought, maybe this isn't necessarily going to work. And we ended up connecting with the folks in Sherburne County who did Graham's Park, and we said, how did you get to this very authentic natural space? And they connected us with a consultant they worked with, HKGI, and what they showed us is they brought in their consultant at the beginning, and they didn't bring in your Cadillac and try to put it in the middle of your driveway. Instead, they began with the driveway and found the car that would fit in their various components of the driveway. Bad analogy, but I went for it. But so the idea was, again, they designed these various elements that you can see here to fit within the existing site, to provide very specific play value, and they put it out to bid and found different contractors. For example, the person who put in the culvert is not a playground vendor. There's somebody who can do a culvert. However, the person who put in the wood swings is probably a playground vendor. And the more we talked, we thought this is an interesting idea and something that we should see if it could make sense. So as we back out, that brings us to this fall. And I went back to the Central Park Foundation at their November meeting, as I promised them I would, and I said, this is what we sort of think would work. We'd like to do a study that determines feasibility and what a nature playground would look like, where it would fit on the site, what might go there. And they immediately said, well, we'll fund that if that's what it takes. And I said, well, I want to make sure you understand there's a possibility we'll get to the end of this study and we don't have the money to do the project, or we just aren't able to move forward. And they said, yeah, but everything's got to start somewhere. So we'll fund this project, the study. And they had also said that they are interested in a substantial contribution to the project if it does go forward at that point. So in the interest of building a broader coalition, we met with the Friends of Roseville Parks as well. They were very interested in this idea and gave us a very similar answer of if you come to us with what we think is an acceptable project, we're in. We want to put some money into it. We want to make it work. So at this point, I said, okay, we're getting pretty far down the road. I need to make sure we talk to the Parks and Recreation Commission and the council. So as I was preparing the presentation for the February Parks and Recreation Commission, I was approached again by John Robertson Smith, who was the donor of the Nature Center Cairns. And he, after some early conversations, said that he would like to donate $500,000 to this project. He's actually, even though we are not there yet, and I've been very clear on that, has begun to make that donation to the Friends of Roseville Parks. That is happening as we speak, and is very, very committed to the project. Went forward, made the presentation to the Parks and Recreation Commission in February. They were very enthused about the project, stated that a number of them they knew these nature playgrounds because they take their kids to them in other communities, and again said, yes, this study's worth doing and something we should look into. So with that, I want to share sort of what my vision for the financial implications of this are, because I certainly don't want to lead down a path and say, yeah, this is going to be a great idea, but we don't know how we're going to pay for it. we've been incredibly blessed by the community support that we appear to have already. As I mentioned, the Central Park Foundation are willing to pay for that initial study. And the project budget really could be a huge spectrum. It could range from a couple $100,000, which is not insignificant, but that would be, largely natural elements. You don't need a lot of infrastructure work, all the way up to $1 million, where you might need to add, adjust trails to have more ADA access, potentially expand parking. It's really based a lot on that infrastructure and what you decide to put in. As I mentioned, we've received commitments of contributions from both the Central Park Foundation as well as Friends of Roseville Parks, and Mr. Robertson Smith has contributed $500,000 that he would like to go towards this project. We also, since the very early idea of this project, have thought it would be a great candidate for the Minnesota Outdoor Recreation Grant. This is a grant program that is funded by the Department of Natural Resources and is intended to connect children to natural spaces. The grant relies very heavily on 3 elements: 1 being shovel ready, 2 being funded through partnerships, so not just city dollars, but a broad consortium of partners, and 3 being community engagement, which we pride ourselves as something we do fairly well. All of that lends us to believe that we think that if we spend the next year doing this study and putting it together, you never know, but we do think we'd be a strong candidate for that grant, which matches funds up to $500,000. So if we brought $500,000 to the table, they would have $500,000 to bring to the table as well. So all of that lends us to believe that we're really quite confident that if we were to move forward and we find a design that we thought would fit and works well with the site, that we could do it without any city funds on that initial upfront investment. Now, you all know that when we talk about the life of an asset, I would be misleading you if I said there will never be any city dollars that will go to this, so I want to be very transparent about that. The little infographic we created on the left talks about sort of a life cycle of any playground, which is you have the early installation, which we think will be fully funded outside of city dollars, the midlife updates, which are sort of mid-range fixes, and then ultimate replacement in 20 years. There's some changes to this because natural elements will wear out a little quicker, and we should know more about that once we get into the study and understand more. But just on some early conversations, we think at about 10 years you can expect a 15% of the total budget will need to be paid, and 20 years they'll need to be full replacement. Of course, it's well within the city's purview to say we have a donation now, and in 20 years we'll worry about it at that time, either through seeking another donation or maybe not replacing it. But generally speaking, it's been the city's practice, and I think it is a good practice to at least be aware of the community doesn't like to have an asset and then say we don't know how we're going to fund the replacement of it. Couple other slides here. One, I do want to talk about some other considerations. So I've presented this so far as an idea that we wouldn't be here if we didn't think was a good idea. But there's certainly project considerations that we need to be aware of, and why I say this can't be as big as Graham's Park or Tamarack Nature Center. Ecological considerations are paramount. This is a nature center, so we're not going to go take down a bunch of trees, take out a bunch of natural spaces to put this in. It needs to fit well, and it needs to be ecologically responsible. Parking on site at the Nature Center is already difficult, particularly in the summertime when the Arboretum across the street is busy. So again, we'll have to do a combination of right-sizing the play space, making sure that it's not something that's going to bring in people from the entire state of Minnesota, but also being thoughtful about, is there an opportunity or a need to expand parking? Can we get people in from Central Park School? What is the way that we can kind of work through that? And again, that's something that'll take study over time. I don't have the answer tonight, but I do think that with intentionality, we can work through that. Additionally, we would be intentional to look at the Hank site as a whole. As we talked about, we've got the boardwalk there. Is there another connection that makes sense with this project? We've talked for a long time about an outdoor teaching space. We don't currently have that there, and building accessibility. And then the other unknown right now is the parcel on the north side of where the Nature Center is currently up for sale. And we have talked to the realtor as well as at least one proposed buyer, and have expressed our interest through park dedication in acquiring a connection up to County Road C. That's a down the line thing, but we're very aware of that as we look at this as well. Two more slides, as I know I've gone on for a while. One, if we were to go forward with the seeking a feasibility and planning study, engagement would be paramount. Those that have worked with us over time know, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that. That's always a priority for us. So we would envision working with both current Hank users as well as people who don't use the Nature Center. The idea is to draw more people in. We want to make sure that we capture them. Program participants, our current natural resources volunteers. One great opportunity is to connect with the Central Park School, which is currently connected via Pathway. They already do a ton of field trips in the facility, but if it can be usable to the school, that's a win-win type situation. So we would begin to make that connection as well. And of course, the donors need to make sure that they feel invested and that their 2 cents are weighed in as well. So that's sort of our engagement plan. Last or second to last slide, I guess. You always feel good when you put a timeline like this together 6 months ago and it still looks the same, but right now we're on track. I don't know that we will be down the line. If you look at our timeline, we are sort of at decision point 1 here. So we began in late 2025 with confirming that partner support, making sure that we have sort of a coalition of people who are interested, but we didn't want to get over our skis. So we went to the Parks and Recreation Commission. That's why I'm here tonight, to really understand if the council's interested in pursuing this further. If you are, our next steps would be to hire a consultant to begin the engagement process, to confirm our funding. So once we have a budget, make sure that we actually have people who are going to write those checks, and then check back in again and say, okay, are we ready to really go forward and do this thing? If so, we'll apply for the grant and hopefully be doing construction by late 2027 if all those pieces fall into place. So the ask for today is twofold. First and foremost is, I guess, permission to move forward. They're a little bit misordered here. And secondarily, if there is the opportunity, if there is a desire to move forward, we would want to officially accept that donation from the Central Park Foundation for the study only. At this point, those other donations, we're not moving to accept those because we don't know if we have a project yet. The future, we would talk about those other, whether it's for parks or Mr. Robertson Smith's donation, once we know more what that project budget would look like. So that's my information on this, and I'm certainly happy to stand for any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Mr. Johnson, questions from the council on the project or the proposal at this time? All right. With that, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening and whether we should proceed with the study or the consultant work on this proposal?
Hi, Carrie Gelly again, Highway 36 and Dale Street. I'm in favor of the nature play space, and I'm very grateful to hear that there are people invested in Roseville that are willing to donate such significant funds of money. I do have a concern about the parcel on the north side of Harriet Alexander, directly adjacent, that's on Cutting Road C, and I think we have an opportunity as a city to prevent maybe some of the mistakes that might have happened in the past. So we have had multiple instances where we've had like high residential housing built very near our parks that then have kind of taken away a sight line and sort of disrupted the natural feeling in some of our parks. So I have a question. Well, I'll finish my comment and then leave you with my question. But so in general, I would advocate if there's a way to expand the Harriet Alexander to acquire that parcel and preserve that element of nature, just to kind of keep the whole place cohesive, feeling natural, and not, spend all this millions of dollars investing in a natural play space, but then we have unnatural elements of housing or business or whatever else that property could be used for. So those are my comments, and I guess my question is, what is that property currently zoned for? And is there a risk or a timeline that property could be purchased by someone else that then would prevent some of these natural uses of that property? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment and question. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening? Sure.
Here I am. Hi, I'm Amy Perkins, and I live up by Emmett. I actually came for an agenda item a little bit further down, but this fits in well. And so I missed the beginning of the presentation, but I do also love the idea of enhancing here at Alexander. I think they've got a lot of great programming. They've got a great director. So from what I did here, I would also be in favor of looking into putting in a playground. And as for the parcel of land up on C, one of the things that has kind of broken my heart since I've moved here about almost 10 years ago now is just watching all the pockets of green space disappear. I know a lot of that has to do with individuals selling property and then it getting developed. Where I live, we've just lost many, many wooded lots, and we're going to hear about another lot and a half, I think, that's coming up for development. So I would love to see, one of the things that I think many people value about Roseville is just how much it feels like we're not quite so much in the city. And again, a lot of that's been lost in the last few years, and once it's gone, we just can't get it back. So I guess this is my heartfelt plea to do what we can as a city. I've been thinking about it in terms of just individuals selling residential lots that were never built up. Like, I would love to know from you guys, and I can do my own research, but what the city can do to protect as many pockets of green as possible, because again, we can develop what's already developed in new and interesting ways, but we can never get back natural spaces once they're gone. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Great. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak to this proposal this evening? All right, we'll go ahead and close the opportunity for public comment. And I believe the zoning of the properties along County Road C on the south side, adjacent to the Nature Center, is single-family residential. I believe that's, and also the comprehensive plan guidance. Or it could be low to medium.
Low-density residential.
Okay. All right. So certainly if somebody came forward with a proposal to put in higher density housing, that would require a change to the zoning and probably the comprehensive plan guidance. If it's the comprehensive plan guidance, that requires a 4/5 vote of the city council to make that change. So it's not a simple proposition. And I know that there's topographical issues with those sites on the south side of C that contribute to how developable those sites are. And so hopefully that helps answer that question. We can't predict what future city councils might vote to do ultimately, but that's the current state of things and was the vision and has been the vision for some time through multiple updates to our comprehensive plan over the last maybe 30 years and more, that those sites are generally speaking pretty low density, and hopefully that remains the case from my perspective. So that I think answers that. As to the preserving a lot of the green space, the challenge, of course, is usually people who plan to use a property for something other than green space and have owned it for a while are very interested in compensation because they were planning to receive compensation if they were going to develop that property. And so the challenge that the city always runs into in those cases is resources versus opportunities, and how can we best match up those two things. And so it's difficult for the city to acquire every single property that may come up for development, but we do have the mechanism, which may be discussed a little further as part of this, which is the notion of park dedication, which is that for certain qualifying proposals, the city can request either a donation or contribution of land as part of the development, or a contribution of dollars towards park development elsewhere. For a lot of the time that I've been on the council, we were accepting the dollars. I think we've had a couple of opportunities in the last few years where we got a little more creative and looked at opportunities to accept land as part of developments. One of those is Sunset Park I have to think of which side of town it's Sunset Park in the western part of Roseville off of County Road B. And then also property just off of Lexington north of City Hall here on the east side. That was acquired through dedication as part of the townhomes that were built farther to the north. So I think we continue to look at those opportunities, and it was already mentioned that that's being looked at here, and certainly we can talk more about that as appropriate, but hopefully that helps folks in the public understand sort of how those things can happen and what some of the challenges can be as well for the city. With that, I think that answers the questions that were brought up. But we do have the request before us. Is there further in need of information from the council, from staff? Anything staff wanted to add either to my answers to correct anything I said or enhance the conversation we're having at this point?
No, I think you got it, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Then we do have the request before us once again to accept the donation of funds to complete the feasibility study, as well as to approve developing and issuing a request for proposals for that study. And those are the two asks this evening of the council.
Move to accept the donation and to move forward with the proposal study.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Groff. Discussion on the motion as the maker, Councilmember Strawn.
No, it's very exciting. I'm sure many current parents are wondering how much interest their children will have in 2 years, but it's exciting. In 20 years from now, we have fabulous volunteers. I'm sure they'll continue to amend and grow and change and adjust, and hopefully we'll see this be a really great long-term amenity to the city.
All right, Councilmember Groff as the seconder of the motion.
I agree with those comments. I do want to point out, though, that this will be a cost to the residents down the road. Obviously, we hope that we would get more donations, and I think I should have asked this earlier. Is the capital improvement plan able to renovate parks? Are we able to use those funds, or do we have to use new funds?
Yep, our intention would be, well, based on council guidance, would be to program it into our capital improvement program. So rather than a one-year hit, we sort of balance it out, try to balance it out and even it out over the years. So once we know the total project count, it becomes a little easier to determine what that annual impact would be. But that would be how we would program it, is use the capital improvement program to make sure that we are planning for that replacement.
And we have years to do that, so that's, I
20 ideally. Yep.
Exactly. So I support the plan. Thank you.
All right, other discussion on the motion? I think that was a point I was going to make, is that certainly we would immediately program it into the capital improvement plan, and then we would have to make sure we can figure out the dollars between now and 20 years from now.
Right.
Oftentimes that's done by setting aside something like 1/20th each year over that time, but we have to take a look at that in light of all the rest of the money we're setting aside in our tax levy and all those things, so we'll figure that out as we go forward. But first we have to figure out if we have a project, which is what's before us this evening. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously 4-0, and that donation is accepted, and the approval is given to get the request for proposals out for that feasibility study.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Johnson, as well as the Park and Rec Commission, all the volunteers, and everybody who's been talking about this up to this point, including the very generous donors who are pledging their funds as of now. All right. With that, then, we'll move to item 7C, which is to hold a public hearing and consider a request to approve a minor plat. And we have our, oh my gosh, why am I blanking? Senior planner. It used to be associate planner or something like that.
Once upon a
years and
time.
years ago. Senior planner, Brian Lloyd, with us this evening to bring this item before the council. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Lloyd for the presentation.
Thank you. If I could please have the document camera for this. I don't plan to show much, but as you mentioned, this is a proposal for a minor plat. The subject site is in the corner of Brenner Avenue and Chatsworth Street. I have more detailed drawings with me. They were provided as well in the council packet. I don't imagine the detail will show up particularly well given the scale of the plans, but I'll just do this as representing the proposal generally. It's to pretty much split it right in half, east to west, and create 2 residential parcels out of the existing one that's there today. The simple analysis is that both of these proposed parcels are plenty large enough to meet the minimum standards, both in terms of lot width and area. The applicant has been working with Roseville's Public Works staff to develop a stormwater BMP that's larger than strictly needed by development of this site, but that will capture and improve stormwater treatment in the public right-of-way there. And so the city would sort of take ownership and maintenance of that BMP after it was built and installed by the applicant. And the Parks and Recreation Commission did review it earlier this month and recommended a dedication of cash in lieu of land at this site. The only other sort of typical part of the analysis involves a tree preservation plan. I see that in the plan that I had attached to the council packet didn't have the inventory on it, as typically would be included with the graphical plan for tree preservation. I would just note that the proposed removals for building new homes and for the stormwater management area in the easternmost part of the site are so far outweighed by the trees that would remain on the property, particularly because the two largest trees are on the westernmost edge of the property and sort of well out of range of any of the construction activity there. But of course, that's something we would monitor as the project would continue. Aside from that, I did have one phone call from a nearby resident late last week who was asking in particular whether these lots could be built with duplexes or twin homes. Because both of them are slightly less than the minimum 11,000 square feet that's required for duplexes or twin homes, they could not. The applicant could have proposed a property line that is slightly off to one side, leaving one of the parcels big enough for that. But this is the same person that's doing other development in the community presently on lots that are plenty large enough for duplexes or twin homes. And his interest is in building single-family detached homes. So it's not a surprise to me that he didn't propose, that sort of varied lot size program to allow for the development of a duplex. And that's really all I have, and I'll conclude by indicating that we do recommend approval of the minor plat with a couple of routine conditions of approval related to the stormwater and park dedication. And if there are other questions that members of the council have, I'm happy to try to answer those.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Are there questions from the council on the plat being proposed this evening? And just to clarify, once again, you indicated that both of the proposed lots are well beyond our standards for lot size
Right.
and dimensions.
The minimum width requirement is 85 feet, and these are both in excess of 100 feet. And the minimum area requirement is 9,350 square feet, and these are just shy of 11,000.
All right, thank you again. I did have one question. And just to clarify, stormwater BMP means best management practice for those who aren't hip to all the lingo. And the one question I did have on that is we talked about city ownership. Would that be done through some sort of easement or other document filed against the property, or what's the anticipated way that would be handled? Or do we know at this time?
Well, it looks like, and again, the scale is small, but it looks like on the preliminary plat there is a stormwater easement described. I don't have the remote out here, but could we please zoom in on this plan? Or I do have the remote here coming.
Maybe the microphone.
Oh, okay, thanks. Yep.
I think
Oh, great, thank you.
great.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. And so there's a dashed line here that continues around here that seems to encompass the bulk of that excavation area, which would be, part of that stormwater treatment. So it does look like there's an easement proposed here for that purpose. I have not scrutinized the plans for that, but I know our public works staff, will have been tracking that.
All right, thank you for that. And the only reason I bring that up for, two reasons. One is, obviously, we want to understand how the ownership is defined. And second, I know that, for instance, at the Met Council, when they consider each city's residential density calculations, they exclude stormwater features or best management practices when they're city-owned through such things as easements. But when it's simply a contractual arrangement to maintain something, we don't get credit for those in terms of our density calculations at the Met Council, which for a city like Roseville may not be as big of an issue as some other cities, but certainly it was something that I became aware of through the planning for the next kind of planning process that made me think about that. So I just wanted to, once again, ask that question. Were there other questions from the council? Councilmember Strawn.
Thank you. When I look at this, what's up on the display, and then the aerial photo, I see this existing structure to the north there. I would assume that's maybe the garage to the home that's there already. It seems like it's closer to that on the aerial than it is to the line than it is in there. So would that meet the proper setbacks for distance from the lot line?
Just to clarify, you're talking about this structure here?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I can see because I'm sitting close to it, it does say that it's the existing house, not an accessory structure. So a couple of different, I guess, responses to that. That's going to be a house with a Chatsworth Street address, which means that would be the front. Minimum requirement for the home from this side property line is only 5 feet.
Okay.
And there wouldn't be any requirements pertaining to this property about where that home is located. So there, the existing setback distance between the home and the existing northern boundary of these lots isn't something that would be germane to the consideration of this subdivision approval. I would add a bit of esoteric context to that. Aerial photos are made to look like they're being taken from directly above. In practice, they are not, and so it's entirely possible, entirely routine, that things like houses in particular or other buildings can look like they are further toward one side of the property, depending on where the plane actually was when that aerial photo was taken. So it's not surprising that it looks different on Ramsey County's aerial photo.
And then just double checking on the two homes, as they look like maybe they mirror one another, as far as the setback from one another on the lot line that they share.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, they'll have adequate setback from that lot line then too?
Absolutely. What's proposed here, I didn't honestly measure it. I'm assuming that it's at least 5 feet. When we review subdivision proposals, we're not, strictly speaking, reviewing proposed setbacks. We would definitely ensure at the time of construction that they are meeting requirements for the setbacks. But, given that these lots are more than large enough to meet the minimum requirements, there won't be any problem meeting those minimum requirements or those minimum setback standards at the time of construction.
And who is the current property owner for this particular lot?
I don't, so I was going to say I don't have the application in front of me, which would have the name. But on the RCA for this evening, I did indicate that the owner is also the current applicant, Cara Builders. I presume that's accurate, but like I said, I don't have it in front of me to verify.
Okay. It's not one of the adjacent landowners. It's actually already the builder.
As far as I know, that must be right.
Thank you.
All right, other questions from the council for staff? All right. Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. We do want to provide an opportunity for public comment since this is a public hearing this evening. We did provide notice, I believe, to all of the property owners and residents within 500 feet of the property lines of this proposal. And so that is the reason that probably folks are here this evening is because of that notice. That is a standard practice of the city. And we have affidavits of mailing available in the planning office and things like that to verify that, which is something we always mention for our public works hearings, but for some reason don't mention them for our planning hearings. But anyway, that's inside baseball that you don't care about. With that, once again, the rules for public comment is the same 3-minute time limit per speaker. We ask that you identify yourself by your name and your street or address at the beginning of your comments, address comments or questions to the city council. You'll have one opportunity to speak for this agenda item. And then once again, if you have a name that I may not be able to spell with a reasonable guess, feel free to just write it down on the clipboard off to the side once you finish your comment or questions this evening. And with that, we will open the opportunity for public comment during this public hearing.
I'll go ahead and get things started. My name is Tim Maris. I live at 988 Brenner, directly to the south, on shown right here on the map. And I've got just some comments about orientation of said lots in regard to possible pedestrian safety considerations, and just a request maybe for additional consideration by the council in regards to this proposal. As was stated, the builder is Cara Builders, LLC. This is currently some excerpts from their website. And one of the things that is noted is oversized garages that is present here. And we'll get into that as we go. But this site is relatively unique. So here again is that proposal being shown with kind of the unique feature that the garages, or the garages and driveway portions, are meant to be very, very close to one another. Closer than any driveways currently in the neighborhood, given the size of the lot, and kind of as close as reasonably possible given the lot division proposed. Why that is a consideration point is the context of where this is located. So one of the unique features is that it's directly south by a block of Emmett D. Williams Elementary. This is just a broader view showing the property currently in blue. Emmett D. Williams is the main thoroughfare is Chatsworth, which is this busier street. Also feeds from Brenner from both east and west to Chatsworth, getting up there. The reason it's unique is given the neighborhood orientation, everything within that half-mile radius per the school board does not receive bus transportation directly. So as a result, Emmett D. Williams has a lot of neighborhood walkers who are walking down Chatsworth, coming from the side streets. Chatsworth is known as the busy street, where everyone has to be aware and take caution. The side streets are kind of the reprieve from the busy streets. And so together they complement one another well. So again, asking that we would consider the safety of community members and elementary students going there. The other interesting feature is down at the end of the block is the entrance to the trail to Little Lake Josephine. And so also directly past that house are a lot of walkers throughout the day from the adjoining neighborhood streets to get there. And the reason I bring that up is with new construction brings large garages, which are convenient. And I'm not against large vehicles, but large vehicles are known to bring additional considerations with them. So there are increases of roughly 40% that have been indicated for pedestrians due to the increased prevalence of these large vehicles. They're not well accommodated in garages of the 60s and before, which serves as somewhat of a deterrent. For children, which is relevant because of elementary school, it can be as high as 82% increase in the odds risk for fatalities. Additionally, driveways were responsible for 26% of injuries for children in pedestrian accidents in a study from Utah. And so the consideration would be for pedestrian safety, going from a side street where there are currently no driveways on that side of the street to two that are relatively concentrated, that could have obstructions from people parking on one or the other, making it hard for folks backing out to see other pedestrians. I would just request that the city take a look at this slight revision to the proposal, where you'd orient one of the lots, which are roughly square after division, orient one of the lots on Chatsworth, and then leave one of them oriented to Brenner, which serves to decouple the driveways from one another, providing better sight lines along Brenner and more room towards the intersection for cars coming to the stop sign. So it's a stop sign on Brenner from both directions, and Chatsworth is just a through street. The vehicles and driveways along Chatsworth have better sight lines already, and so that likely wouldn't present any additional risk. And again, people preferentially avoid Chatsworth from a pedestrian perspective because it is the busy street, and Brenner is that preferred walking street. I thank you for the time.
All right, thank you. Great. Is there additional public comment on this proposal this evening?
Hi, I'm Ryan Costello. I'm the house just to the north, 3073. So I purchased my house from my uncle about 6 years ago, and I was unable to purchase that lot, just financial reasons. But I was explained that there's not enough setback available for a house on this corner lot to meet the requirements of all these houses here, as well as here. It would be too close to the corner. In order to fit two homes, you'd have to take the back part of my lot and have a very narrow lot on this side. And that's how it was explained to me 6 years ago. So unless things have changed. Also, it didn't show the trees very well. There's a big maple tree right in the middle of the property line. There's hedges all the way around. You look on Google Maps, and there are giant pine trees everywhere. So they would be cutting down the majority of the trees to get 2 homes in there. So I'm proposing that just 1 home get built on the site. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there other comments on this proposal this evening? Anyone else from the public wish to speak to this item?
Hi, Amy Perkins again, and I lived on the block at 904. So I just want to speak in favor of my 2 neighbors who just spoke. And I was also going to mention in the, I mean, perhaps I wasn't reading it correctly, but when I looked at the plans, and there's another version I saw online that showed the trees. And I assume that trees with an X through would indicate trees that were going to be cut down.
Correct.
So I counted quickly, and I don't think my number is exactly right, but agreeing with what Ryan just said, I counted at least 15 or close to 15 trees that would come down. And if you drive by the corner of that lot, the trees are magnificent, and that would be a huge lot. So I also would love to see only 1 home go in that spot. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak to this proposal this evening? Hello and welcome.
Hi, Joan Bolfer. I live at 3030 Chatsworth Street, and I've lived there for 36 years. And I'm just going to reiterate the safety issues, because the safety on Chatsworth has been a problem since I moved in. And there hasn't been any remediation for that. So I just want to say it is really an issue. And there are a lot of people and a lot of kids who walk up Chatsworth to get to E.D. Williams. So if there's any consideration of how we can make that safer for kids, because you're just adding, again, 2 more cars and potentially children to the neighborhood. And I would really like the council to consider that. People coming down Chatsworth, because it's a hill, are almost always speeding. And we have never had a resolution to that problem. So anyway, just to add that in support of the safety issue.
All right,
Thank
thank you
you
for your comments. All right, is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak to this proposed subdivision this evening? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing then. Move to council consideration. Just as to questions that were brought up, I guess one of the things is as far as standards for driveway locations. I guess it wasn't necessarily a question about the standards, but we might as well, since the topic was brought up. We do have standards as a city as to where those can be located on properties, especially in relation to property lines. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Lloyd maybe to enlighten us a little bit on that.
That's right. And mostly we'd be talking about minimum distance, minimum spacing between a driveway and a street corner. I don't offhand know what that minimum distance is. It's something that I could be concerned about if the driveway were proposed all the way on the eastern side of the site, adjacent to Chatsworth Street, but being all the way over on the western side of the proposed lot there, it certainly will be farther away from that intersection than the minimum requirement would be. I think it's the minimum requirement is something like 20 feet maybe, but I can't remember for sure.
All right, and then as to the location of driveways relative to property lines themselves, I thought we had a standard something like 5 feet.
Yes, the setback, especially from that interior property line, which is the sort of proposed common one, is at least 5 feet away. And the same would be true for this property line, which is also not adjacent to a street corner, minimum spacing of 5 feet for those driveway surfaces, just like the buildings themselves.
All right, and there's nothing official about the location of driveways as they're shown on a plat, because we're simply approving the lot lines and the easements and things like that at this point.
Yep.
So what they've provided is an example
Right.
Okay.
Yes, and it's an example that's provided as an assumption of what the likely or what the possible improvements might be for the sake of understanding what trees might be removed and understanding how much stormwater needs to be accounted for in the stormwater management plan.
And it's entirely possible that actually there's trees on the west side that might be better preserved by not having a driveway that close there.
Yes.
Although there is a tree on the east side as well. And just to the tree question, I think just in my preliminary count, it seemed like there were about approximately 10 trees proposed to be removed and maybe 9 trees remaining, but I was counting while other people were talking, so that could be way
And
off.
more than the absolute numbers of trees, the main driver of whether tree replacement is required is the size of the trees. And the two largest, what we call heritage-sized trees that are on the property are on the far western side, out of range of any of the construction activities. So those two largest trees will remain, and so it seems likely that the total removals wouldn't trigger a replacement requirement because again, it's not by numbers of trees exactly.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lloyd. All right, council, we have the request before us to consider this preliminary plat and the conditions as outlined, which were relatively straightforward. One is to create the approved stormwater best management practice, and on completion, that'll be owned and maintained by the city, as well as the park dedication fee. Before I recognize Councilmember Strawn, I did want to just clarify one other thing in relation to this. So this is a plat, a minor subdivision or a plat approval. Do we have a final plat that comes back before the council in this case, or is this sort of the one stop for everything at this point?
This is the sort of one touch that the council will have with a minor plat like this. If the minor plat proposed is approved, it is the preliminary plat, strictly speaking. The applicant will come back then with a final plat drawing, and that will be reviewed administratively to ensure that it conforms with the approval that was granted.
All right. And Councilmember Strong.
I just wanted to make sure we address Mr. Costello's concern about the setbacks and his understanding based on being next door. Do you have any more information on that, Mr. Lloyd?
Yeah, I can't account for what conversation he had, to understand what he did about the building setback. This is what we would call a reverse corner lot, which means that this required setback for the house along the Chatsworth side will have to be 30 feet, like the minimum requirement for the houses adjacent to it. Their front yards up here coincide with the side yard, but for uniformity's sake, I suppose a 30-foot setback is required here, as well as here on the front of the proposed lot, or at least as it's arranged here. And the scale, again, is rather small, but 30 feet is, the proposed setback, does it say? It might say, but I can't quite see it, is more than 30 feet, from that Chatsworth Street property line. So it would meet the minimum requirements as proposed. I think it could probably even be a little bit closer, but.
Right. Council, is there a motion in relation to the proposed plat that's before the council this evening?
Move approval.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Bauer to move approval of the plat as proposed with the conditions presumably as outlined, and I believe that's through the resolution that's attachment 4 in the packet. Discussion on the motion as the maker, Councilmember Groff.
I understand that these things are frustrating for the neighborhood to have changes, but the applicant is meeting the requirements that we have in our zoning laws. And with that information, it's necessary to approve these types of buildings. So I do think there are other times down the road where things will be looked at again by the planning department, and it will be when we get closer to the final designs of the property. But it does meet the minimum requirements.
Right, and as the seconder, Councilmember Bauer.
Yeah, this is always a challenge when I was on the planning commission. I don't like to see these lots split, but as Councilmember Groff said, this is what it's in our zoning. It is what we're held to. When the comprehensive plan comes up again this year, we can reevaluate it, and I would be in favor of making changes so splits like this can't happen. But as of right now, this is what our zoning is, and this is what we need to follow.
Councilmember Strawn.
And I'd recommend that if there's concerns, to make sure that if a safety study has not been done before, that maybe a safety study be done as far as stop signs or other things we've been told recently about the efficacy of those can be not as good as people hope, but as far as I recall, I don't think is it a controlled intersection?
It is controlled on the Brenner part.
On the
Brenner
Brenner
has to
part.
stop for Chatsworth.
Okay, yeah. And it is downhill, so I would assume that maybe changing the direction or reorienting that, but that's not my area of expertise, but maybe someone who has that expertise could offer some additional.
Certainly, and I think it may be a challenge to understand how a stop on Chatsworth affects the safety on Brenner necessarily. But certainly, I think the having been in that neighborhood a number of times over the last several years, the concerns about pedestrians on Chatsworth is definitely valid. And I was going to attempt to find the city's pathway master plan to see where that might have stood on the plans for the future. I don't believe it's very high on the list at this point, just based on the traffic counts and things like that. So, but I will do more research on that. The other thing, just as a comment, sort of on the general planning process and the notion that maybe in the next comprehensive plan update we might not allow this type of lot split. I'm not 100% sure that that might be the case because we've got conflicting desires. One of the desires is keeping things nice the way they are and keeping open space and not a lot of new houses in the neighborhood. The other is the desire to make sure we're providing opportunities for housing for people in the community, and those kind of clash, certainly. And we're trying to do the best we can as decision makers for the public to make sure that we're providing for the opportunity to preserve where we can, as well as the opportunity to provide housing where we can. This proposal, just back to this proposal, is proposing lots that are well larger than what our minimum standards are that we have in our zoning code. And so that helps me be supportive of it. I don't think on that basis that I could deny it, because I think that the developer would have a pretty strong case that the city is being arbitrary and not applying our own standards. And so that's to elaborate on the challenge that Councilmember Groff expressed in his comments. I think that's the reality that we face as a public body and as a governing body of the city here, because we would be essentially not applying our own standards in that case if we didn't approve the plat. However, I think we can be mindful of things like adjacency impacts. We can be mindful of those types of things. We already try to do that, and the existing zoning code is an evolution of what started in 1959 when the first code was adopted by the city. I think that's been, there's been a lot of changes we made over the years, all towards making sure that we address potential impacts to neighbors. All of that being said, though, once again, I think that this proposal meets all of our requirements. I will even go a little bit further to say that I feel that it is reasonable. We're adding 2 houses to a neighborhood that's got a fair number of houses. Now, granted, the density is perhaps a little greater on the eastern side of Chatsworth on Brenner Street as opposed to the western side. I'm fully aware of that, but it's certainly not out of character with sort of the general neighborhood more broadly. And so I think that it for the reasons of the technical reasons as well as just seeming to fit in appropriately, I think that it has to be supported. So on that basis, I would be voting in favor of the motion, but acknowledging the comments that we've received from neighbors this evening, as we often do receive in these cases. With that, we've got the motion before us to adopt the resolution approving the minor plat as proposed with the conditions as outlined related to park dedication as well as the dedication of the ownership of the stormwater best management practice. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously 4-0, and that plat is approved. Thank you again for the staff's work on this, as well as for members of the public who've come and been a part of the process this evening. And we appreciate all of the voices of the community that participate, and that's why we set up a process with a public hearing. That then brings us to the end of our business items on the council agenda this evening. We do have one set of council minutes for our consideration, and those are the minutes from the February 9th City Council meeting. Those have been provided to council. Council has provided comments back, and the revised draft is before the council this evening for our consideration. Are there any other changes that need to be made or a motion to approve as presented?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Bauer to approve the meeting minutes of our February 9th meeting as presented. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. That passes unanimously 4-0. Those minutes are approved. We have the remaining items on the consent agenda, Mr. Trudgeon. That is the items except for item 10F, which was taken up earlier. Mr. Trudgeon, would you give us a brief description of those remaining items?
Yes, I will. Lloyd, in the control room, could we have the computer screen back up? Thank you. All right, a lengthy consent agenda tonight. Item 10A approves payments in the amount of, approves payments in the amount of $1,898,014.88. Item 10B approves massage therapy establishment license for Ataraxis Massage and Wellness on Rice Street and a temporary gambling permit for a bingo event held at the Beedale Club on March 26 for the Edina Realty Foundation. Item 10C approves a professional services agreement with American Engineering Testing for construction material testing as part of the Lexington Avenue Sidewalk Project. Item 10D approves a resolution awarding a contract to Sunram Construction for the aforementioned Lexington Avenue Sidewalk Project in the amount of $365,536. Item 10E approves entering into a professional service agreement with St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce and cooperative funding agreement with the City of Maplewood for the Rice Carpenter Alliance. Item 10F was already taken up. Item 10G adopts a resolution approving a cooperation construction agreement with MnDOT for the Snelling Avenue resurfacing project later this summer. Item 10H approves a resolution to grant MnDOT a permanent easement for the stormwater pipes that will be replaced by the Snelling Avenue resurfacing project just mentioned. This summer, the city will receive $4,300 for granting this easement. Item 10I approves a resolution entering into a grant agreement with Metropolitan Council for the city's inflow and infiltration program to reduce the amount of flow going into the sanitary sewer system. It is anticipated the city will receive approximately $215,000 of grant funds. Item 10J approves entering into a Clean Water Funds grant agreement amendment with Metropolitan Council to receive an additional $5,000 of grant funds for a water efficiency rebate program. Item 10K approves applying for a grant from the Crisis Response Fund through the Minnesota Office of Justice to offset the costs for the embedded social workers in the Roseville Police Department. In 2025, the city received this grant for $200,000, which expires at the end of 2026. The Roseville Police Department will be applying for $300,000 in grant funds to be used in 2027 and 2028. Item 10L approves applying for the Minnesota Automobile Theft Prevention Program grant administered by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. This 3-year grant reimburses the city $100,000 annually for auto theft investigations. Since 2021, we have received this grant funding through this program, and this current cycle is ending in June 2026. If we do not receive grant funding, this position will be eliminated from the police department. Item 10M accepts the award of the Community Crime Intervention and Prevention Grant Funding. Sorry, there's a lot of words to these grants, apparently. From the Minnesota Office of Justice in the amount of $325,000. This grant will offset the cost of the Roseville's PD's Homeless Outreach Program from February 2026 to December 31st, 2027. The city has also received this grant in the past previously, and the most recent grant expiring at the end of 2025. I would mention, as the funding for the position was uncertain, we did include levy funds in the 2026 budget to ensure this continuation of this position. Accepting this grant will offset those budgeted costs. And a big shout out to all the folks in the organization that are writing these grants. It is a great opportunity for us to leverage additional public dollars to help provide services to our community. And that is the consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Is there a motion on the
So moved.
consent agenda? All right, moved by Councilmember Strawn,
Second.
second by Councilmember Bauer. Discussion on the motion?
Again, we are so thankful. I was speaking with a leader of another city, and I said, "Oh, we're so fortunate to get all these grants." And they said, "Oh, we don't really get grants." And I can't even imagine what that's like. We hear it almost every time we meet, that there's some grant, and so we're really fortunate for the skill and the dedication of those who put this together. They're not easy. They take a lot of time, but they really are making our city and our departments safer and better places. So, and I see some of our CAT folks, and thank you for being here too. I see you've gotten other awards this week too. But just thank you for all they do. It's really, really important to what we do as a city and this, how we serve our residents.
Right, other discussion on the motion? And I would just note as well that the funding is through the end of 2027, as I heard, for the social worker or the homeless outreach. And that helps in terms of looking at our levy impacts for 2027. As we're looking at the budget, we can hopefully be able to look at how we apply that funding, which is already in the levy, but then we don't have to increase levy for other things potentially. All right. With that, we have the motion before us to approve the consent items as presented, with the exception of F, which was already taken up. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those items are approved. That brings us to future agenda review. Mr. Trudgeon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I know we need to jump into another meeting here. And I would just point out there's a couple changes from what's in the packet here. We do have a meeting next Monday, March 2nd. Fairly light agenda. We look to appoint the commissioners. We have a conversation on the snowplow policy. We look to have updated. Hasn't been touched for many years. Also consider approving an updated noise ordinance for the process. On the 16th, we do have an EDA meeting. We anticipate there'll be continued discussion about the housing funds that we'll be talking about shortly. We also have a pre-development agreement with High Development for the Pick property redevelopment, and also authorize an agreement with Ramsey County for another grant that we've received for the High Development to help with the environmental cleanup. On the 16th of March, after the EDA meeting, looking to receive a presentation from Liz Nowak, Visit Roseville President and CEO. I just confirmed late this afternoon that Michael Bradley, attorney for 9 North, will be able to be present to discuss broadband franchising. We also want to establish a 2027 budget calendar, which is mentioned, and also receive the preliminary cash reserve level report for the council. Another meeting on the 23rd. We do have some land use items there regarding the state patrol headquarters behind Target, both a rezoning and a comprehensive plan. I think that is going through the Planning Commission here shortly. And then also hotel licenses. It's back again. We are completing our inspections, I think relatively going pretty well. I think it's been a market difference from year over year. A lot of the hotels have been prepared, a lot less violations. But I don't have the full report of everything, so we'll report that back on the 23rd. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there any questions on the future agenda? Any council member initiated items for future agendas, or any announcements or communications from council members? Councilmember Stern.
I noted this at the 9 North meeting as well. There's an annual community gathering for the Rice and Larpenteur Alliance on March 5th at the Community School of Excellence. So technically in St. Paul, but part of that alliance. And I think it includes dinner and such free event. So take a look if you're interested in that.
And I would note that I think the last 3 years or more, it's been held in Roseville at the Hand in Hand Montessori, so they're just trying to rotate it around a little bit amongst the 3 communities. And we encourage people to participate or attend. Councilmember Graff.
And we did have the meeting of the Visit Roseville Board and had an update on what's happened with the restaurant and the hospitality services in Roseville, and a lot of concern because of the activity that's been going on in the city. But the January numbers were better than expected, so that was a good surprise. We'll see how February comes out, but the board and the CEO will talk more about that when she comes to speak to us, and we'll have more data at that time.
All right. If there's no more business before the council, the next item on our agenda is to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Bauer to adjourn the council meeting. No discussion on a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. That passes unanimously 4-0. We are adjourned from the council meeting at 7:44 p.m. We'll transition then to the Economic Development Authority meeting immediately to follow. All right, I hereby call to order the Roseville Economic Development Authority meeting for Monday, February 23rd, 2026 at approximately 7:52 p.m. All right, the roll call will stand as previously called for the council meeting with Councilmember Schroeder noted as absent. We have the same attorney and city manager staffing the meeting, so no further introductions are required along those lines. And the next item then would be, we don't have to do the Pledge of Allegiance a second time. So consideration of tonight's agenda. I'm presuming there's no changes from a staff perspective?
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Are there any changes from a council perspective? A motion to approve tonight's agenda would be appropriate then?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Bauer, seconded by Member Strawn to approve tonight's agenda as presented. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. That passes unanimously 4-0. We have our agenda for this evening. Would note that we did do general public comment at the start of the council meeting, and is our typical practice. We don't repeat that at the start of the EDA meeting that immediately follows, or vice versa. That then brings us to our business items. Our first business item this evening is election of officers to the EDA. That is an annual requirement under state law, and we have our Housing and Economic Development Program Manager, Jeannie Kelsey, with us this evening to bring this item before us for our consideration.
Thank you, President Rowe. As you just so stated, actually, this is the first meeting of 2026 for the EDA. And so this is standard business that needs to be conducted at the first meeting, which is the election of officers. This year, for 2026, you'll see that it's standard that we need to elect the president, vice president, the treasurer. And because our EDA bylaws already do appoint the secretary, which is the executive director, Pat Trudgeon, and now our assistant treasurer is the city finance director, which is Sam Magugrin. Granu. I'll work on that one. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to you then for the election.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kelsey. So once again, we have president, vice president, and treasurer offices. The past practice has been for the president and vice president to be very boring and just be the mayor and acting mayor. We don't have to follow that, of course. And then the treasurer is certainly open. Currently, the mayor would be me. The acting mayor would be Councilmember Schroeder. And we don't have necessarily a designee for the treasurer office. I would entertain a motion at least for the president and vice president roles, if not for the secretary, or for the treasurer, if somebody is interested in that.
I move to keep the president, vice president, both as president as the mayor and vice president as the acting mayor. And in that regard, I'd be comfortable being the treasurer. Since Councilmember Schroeder would be vice president.
I'd also like to be the treasurer.
Oh, okay. We have two nominations for treasurer. Maybe the motion needs to be to appoint the president and vice president as outlined, if we can get a second to that
I just
motion.
withdraw my motion, or amend
Well,
my motion to.
Yeah, exactly. That would be the,
That way.
so your motion is then to approve the president and vice president as the mayor and acting mayor?
That is correct.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Member Bauer, seconded by Member Strawn, to appoint the president, vice president as the mayor and acting mayor for 2026. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. That passes unanimously. Those appointments are made. We have two potential candidacies or nominees for treasurer.
I move to withdraw my motion to be treasurer.
No need to move, you can just withdraw. Do we have a motion for treasurer?
Move Strawn as treasurer.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Member Strawn to move herself as treasurer, seconded by Member Groff. Discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously 4-0. We have our treasurer for 2026. That concludes business item A. Next on our agenda is business item 5B, which is to recognize recipients of the annual Roseville Sustainable Steward Award. And I'll turn it back over to Ms. Kelsey for that recognition.
Thank you, President Rowe, and board members. In 2022, we realigned the whole EDA program, which was the Green Award Program. We worked with the public works staff in order to up it as the Roseville Sustainable Steward Award. Since that time, we've been awarding every year. And this year, we do a lot of outreach every year by either through the newsletters, social media, as well as we do direct contact to residents who have pulled permits for doing the upgrades, and also mail them from all of the energy audits that were completed in 2025. From that, we got 15 applicants and 3 rows to the top, and I just wanted to quickly highlight them. None of the awardees have been able to attend it tonight. And so just wanted to recognize James and Kristen McCone at 2975 Patton Road. As you see, they moved here just last year and they completed a home energy audit. And from that, they followed up with recommendations, installing an air source heat pump and a smart thermostat in 2025. In addition, they switched to using electrical lawn care and added treatments to their exterior windows to prevent bird striking. They also try to, they drive an electric hybrid vehicle, and they replace any trips that they can with walking or biking. The Silver Award is being recognized to Kevin Kraus at 2339 Auerbach Avenue. Kevin completed also a home energy visit in 2025, and on their recommendations, he completed attic insulation and air sealing in 2025. As you can see, he attached the pictures of him doing that improvement, which is a lot of work, but the payoff will be there for him. He also recently reduced the turf coverage in his yard and planted a pollinator garden, and also takes his organic waste to the food scraps at the Dale Street. Then the last one being recognized tonight is Brown's Award of $100, and that's for Anna Fu and Will Bonkenkamp at 257 McCarran's Place. And her neighbors applied for the Lawns to Legman's grant to mitigate erosion and remove invasive species along Lake McCarran shoreline. They also planted 128 native plants to provide forage for the pollinators and stabilize the shoreline area. They added insulation. She personally added insulation to their garage and attic, installed rooftop solar in 2025, and have many sustainable practices around their home to eliminate plastic usage and waste. And as you can see, those pictures are also in your packet for you to review. I want to recognize the remaining awardees will receive either a window clean or yard sign for them to have as recognition. Since we don't have
many of those.
Yes, many of those. And since we don't have those individuals here tonight, as we usually do by presenting them with their award, I just conclude this presentation.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kelsey. I think we can all agree that it's impressive to see these efforts that are going on by people in the community in their homes and their properties. It gives a lot of ideas to people as well as things that they can be doing. And I've been making notes myself, so we'll be working on that. We'll be keeping myself busy. But it's great to see those efforts, and that we always have such dedicated awardees each year. I'm also glad to see the list of the 12 additional awardees with the recognition that they'll be getting in addition to the gold, silver, and bronze folks that we recognized and had the pictures from this evening. Other comments from council members? Councilmember Groff?
I would
EDA
also,
members.
I would also like to thank Ms. Kelsey, because this has been built on work that you've done, and by contacting those people that are pulling permits and things, it's really expanded it. And how great to have someone who's only lived in Roseville 1 year to be aware of these programs and feel good about moving to Roseville and what all the city does and offers. So I think a big thank you is owed to you and your department.
And we can't forget Noah Bakken as well, our
Right.
sustainability coordinator.
And she was not able to be here tonight either because of another conflicted meeting.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you again to everybody for that, and look forward to seeing what people come up with in 2026. That then brings us to our third business item this evening, which is to consider a request for a one-time source of funding for Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity to provide land acquisition funding related to a the Community Land Trust property acquisition for the City of Roseville, or in the City of Roseville. Once again, Ms. Kelsey for this item.
Thank you, President Rowe and board members. The Twin Cities Habitat has a letter of intent to purchase excess land behind Covenant Church that has been subdivided. The land is zoned to low to medium density residential. Based on the size of this parcel, could accommodate 3 new homes. Originally, we applied for a grant through Ramsey County and were awarded, and the grant was going to pay for the land acquisition. After further discussion with Ramsey County in receiving the grant, they had notified us that prevailing wages would apply, which created a challenge for us to be able to achieve successfully. And while this would normally not be problematic, the grant funds could be administered, and what we've done in the past is used them through down payment assistance. But because of the fact that this acquisition of this land is in a timeline that does not coincide with our grant, and with us having to expend that grant, we would not be able to use those funds on the backside for the down payment assistance. So for that reason, we're requesting that you consider providing the one-time upfront. Normally, we do not provide funds up front. It normally is provided similar to like a DPA. We provide the $80,000 per home upon acquisition of a new homeowner into a house. That equates, usually these 3 homes would equate it to $240,000 that we would be supplementing in order to make the homes affordable. But in this particular situation, Habitat, because of the new construction, is able to achieve affordability with just requesting the $197,000 upfront, which ultimately equates to $65,667 per home. I do want to note that up on your dais and also additionally on the online packet, we did put in additional information about trying to achieve the prevailing wages and that determination. And I do have representation here related to that, and I'll turn it over to them at the end for you to ask those questions. But I just wanted to highlight that normally that this program, when we entered into this partnership with Twin Cities Habitat, we had identified sources up front. Those sources up front that we were using were existing fund balances of the Housing Replacement Program, our existing CDBG fund balance, as well as affordable housing TIF, and we were able to achieve additional funds through the ARPA, which was the federal funds through the COVID recovery. Until then, we've had sufficient funds, but since then, and we've also received other grants. Since then, we have, in the homes that are in the pipeline, are speaking for any remaining funds that we have budgeted for that. And so we do not have any excess funds in order to utilize it. Because this is a different request than already existing program that we have with Habitat, we have discussed with our attorney, Rachel Turney, about the use of using LAHA for the acquisition of this one-time upfront funds. She believes that we would be able to successfully utilize it since we still have fund balances in the other accounts. I do have Jessica Cole tonight from Twin Cities Habitat here for answering any additional questions you may have, as well as just to also reintroduce her and the team at Twin Cities Habitat since you don't get to see them very often.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kelsey. And I don't know if the representative from Twin Cities Habitat just wanted to stand for questions or had anything else to say in support of the proposal this evening? Or just wanted to introduce yourself?
How about that? Good evening. So yeah, I'm Jessica Coyle, real estate manager with Twin Cities Habitat. Thank you all for your time tonight, and just want to thank you again for your partnership in this program and the work that we've done in concert over the last about 4 years now. So again, we're really excited about this new opportunity, and just again, thank you for your partnership to date, and good to see you and meet you all tonight.
All right, thank you. I did have a question, so, and for either of you or both. So the difference in this particular proposal this evening is that normally we would provide that down payment assistance at the end of the project, and because of the fact of the timing of the process, This is being looked at as upfront assistance for the acquisition. That's the biggest difference between the typical way we do it. So that sounds to me like the affordability is still maintained by the assistance from the city. It's just the assistance is being provided at a different time in the project, and we won't be providing the down payment assistance in addition. Is that correct?
Not our amount.
Not
no.
ours.
Any other grants that we may receive, yes, possibly, but not any other EDA funds.
All right, thank you for clarifying that. Other questions from members of the EDA? Member Bauer.
Are there any other alternatives besides using the LAHA funds? I mean, we have some funds in other accounts, that aren't moving. I'm thinking of like manufactured homes, other things. Could those be moved into an account that used rather than LAHA funds?
Certainly, that is up to your discretion. We do have the multifamily fund balance, and that is in the next discussion of the next topic on the agenda. And we do also, in that agenda item, discuss other funding going forward in setting aside funds for habitat, other acquisition of homes that are possible going forward after the ones that are already currently in the pipeline.
So are you saying that we could use funds that are in 724 for this upfront acquisition?
You can, if there's enough funds, yes.
I'm looking at them.
We would have to then reallocate some of the other discussion for tonight, and that would maybe offset some other, yes. So multifamily, if that's what you'd like to use, yes, we could.
I'm just looking at that. We've never moved any money out of 724. So
Yes, we have in the past, yes.
in the past, I mean, yes, for a long time though.
Last year.
Recent.
For 724? Okay. 2 years, I guess. All right, different timeline for me. But, okay, so we could use any other account, or not any other account, but we could use 724.
Certain other.
Any other accounts for tonight's discussion, yes, we would be able to use.
Okay.
Other questions from the members of the board? Right, so if the board wanted to provide the assistance, and it doesn't come from one source, it can come from another source, and then we just have to shuffle around our remaining discussion, it sounds like. So it's just, it's kind of like
I guess
where it comes from.
Get a point of clarification there. Are we making a motion that also dictates tonight where those funds are coming from?
I believe because it's up front that we need to designate where it's coming from.
Correct, because we would come back forward with a development agreement identifying those funds and a closing for us to wire those funds for the upfront of the acquisition of the lots.
And that's imminent?
That, since they have a letter of intent, yes.
All right. Other questions from the board? All right, if not, we will open it up for public comment. If there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this particular item this evening in terms of providing the acquisition assistance for the Habitat for Humanity in conjunction with the Community Land Trust for these acquisition of this property for the 3 homes, affordable home ownership homes. Anyone from the public wish to speak to this item this evening? All right, seeing no one then, we'll close the opportunity for public comment. And we are asked then to consider approving this funding. And once again, I just need to get to the specific request to make sure I got it. We might have a resolution. We always seem to have resolutions.
We do
No,
not.
this is just a motion.
Just a motion.
All right, so the motion would be to provide direction to staff to support the request from Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity to provide the one-time upfront funding in the amount of $197,000 using the source that we identify for the acquisition
So
of that
moved.
project.
Second.
Did you want to identify the source in your motion?
I'd like to use the LAHA funds as indicated at this time, and if we choose to find other funds, work on the next section, we can address where those are going.
All right, it's been moved by Member Strawn, seconded by Member Groff, to follow the staff recommendation and approve those funds from the Local Affordable Housing Aid, or LAHA. Discussion of the motion. As the maker of the motion, Member Strawn.
I respect and honor Ms. Kelsey and Ms. Gunlock's opinions on where these need to go, and I appreciate our ongoing relationship with the Twin Cities Habitat and all that's done for our community. Thank you.
Right, as the seconder, Member Groff.
Nothing further.
Right, other discussion on the motion? I would just add, as we noted earlier, it seems to be that housing funding sort of is housing funding, and ultimately we have to figure out how we're going to use it. And if this source is identified as a source, it seems to be as good as any other one, especially given the limit of time that we have to actually expend the funds coming through that aid program and sales tax. So with that, we have the motion before us. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously 4-0, and that is approved. Thank you. That then brings us to our broader, bigger discussion this evening in relation to our programs and funding more broadly as an EDA. And for that, we have our Community Development Director, Janice Gunlock, with us to provide the framework for the discussion and kick things off with the council or the board, whomever. Whoever we are. Yeah.
At this hour of the night.
Ms. Gunlock, I'll turn it over to you before I say anything else that I'm going to regret.
Thank you, President Rowe, members of the board. This is a broader conversation about the EDA's housing programs and ongoing funding. We had a similar conversation in, I think it was May of 2023. It wasn't as big as this one, but that's sort of the last time we talked about our existing housing programs and how to continue to fund those programs. I think a little bit of background information is relevant in this case based on the detail that we're getting into. First of all, before the EDA was created in 2016, there was an HRA active in Roseville, and that HRA pursued a lot of the housing programs that we're talking about, or at least the beginnings of them. When the EDA was created, all of the funds and programs of the HRA were transferred to the EDA. EDAs have all the same powers of HRAs. However, HRAs do not have all of the same powers as EDAs, and that'll become relevant later on in the conversation. The EDA has then revised and expanded programming to make use of those existing HRA funds, and we'll get into those details. But as I mentioned previously, because certain funds originated through the HRA levy, there are certain restrictions on how those monies can be spent. Some background information on funding. No money has been levied for housing programs through the EDA since the EDA was created. And when I get into a slide about all of our programs, I've tried to outline for you when the last time there was levy support for those programs. But generally speaking, they've been running through existing fund balances. As I mentioned previously, in May of 2023, the EDA did authorize staff to reallocate existing fund balances from several other EDA managed funds so that we could continue the housing programs that we were offering because we were sort of running out of money. And now that budget is nearly gone and additional direction is needed if the EDA wishes to continue its current housing program offerings. Of course, you don't have to do that as part of this conversation. I apologize, I'm recovering from a cold, like a lot of people are. The other sort of element to this conversation that didn't exist in 2023 is the local affordable housing aid. We refer to that as LAHA. This is a sales tax that was created by the legislature in 2023. It's housing aid payments that are given directly to cities. The goal of this tax was to fund and create and sustain affordable housing projects and initiatives. So there are some limitations on how that money can be spent. The city receives these payments semi-annually, and we need to start making decisions about how to spend that money because once we get it, we have to sort of assign it a use within 3 years, and then we have to spend it within 4 years. But what makes this difficult and complicated is the law creating that tax does restrict how those funds can be spent. One detail we're getting into tonight, which wasn't originally anticipated when we scheduled this conversation for January, was law is a potential funding source for eviction prevention, which is a program that the public has advocated for in response to the effects of Operation Metro Surge. Staff actually conceptually was going to propose eviction prevention to you in January. However, the need has obviously greatly increased since that original conversation was envisioned. So the EDA offers many programs. There are 6 different areas here. One is advisory and energy efficiency programs. Jeannie talked about the Sustainable Steward Award. That is funded through this program. There are also energy audits and home energy squad visits. That's funded through this program. This is actually the only program that has EDA levy support, but it's very minor. It's about $35,000, $36,000 annually. And then the other programs do not have levy support. We have a revolving loan program. We've tinkered with it over the years. We've moved some money around and how to fund it, but that is generally a traditional revolving loan program. We have a senior deferred loan program. This is a program specifically for seniors where they can get a loan that doesn't need to be repaid until they sell the home. We have first generation down payment assistance. This is also deferred, an emergency deferred loan, and a manufactured home loan. We haven't actually ever done a manufactured home loan, but other than the revolving loan, all of these other programs are deferred, meaning we're not getting revenue for those until the home sells. This slide here attempts to outline the details of all the programs I just summarized. I'm not going to go into the individual details of every program, but as we talk about funding, it's important to note that many of these programs do not currently have income restrictions. And in order to use LAHA, you need to have income restrictions. So I did want to point that out. For example, the revolving loan, the deferred loan, those do not have income restrictions. Instead, we limit it to the median value of the home because we're focusing on a certain age housing stock in order to keep that improved. Some of the other things I wanted to point out on this side is the column about the last time funds were levied to sustain these programs. And as I mentioned, it's almost solely through the HRA going back to 2014, with the exception of those home energy squad programs. The outstanding balance is what we've got out there in terms of sort of assets for these programs. You'll note the estimated monthly income, the only one we're receiving monthly payments on is the revolving loan. And then the remaining budget, other than the home energy squad, really is referring to the last time we brought this forward in 2023. We allocate, thank you, Rebecca. We allocate money to these programs, but then to make sure we've got enough money for each individual one, we kind of assign a budget that CEE, who administers most of these programs, works with. And so that remaining budget is what's left after that 2023 conversation. And that might have even changed since then, depending on some loans that have closed, because I've seen some invoices come in just in the last couple of weeks. So those are our existing home loan programs, all of them created by the HRA levy. This next slide.
Before you leave that slide, it may not be clear to people, but the revolving loan program is for housing renovation projects. Basically, that's the use of those funds typically, as I understand it.
Yes, President Rowan, it's important to note that all of these programs don't really relate to the creation of new affordable housing. They relate to people being able to continue to stay in their homes and improve their homes, namely homes that are at or below Roseville's median value, and we have that amount in here. I think it's $379,400. So yes, you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
This next one I've sort of allocated on its own slide because it does sort of relate to creating new affordable housing opportunities, albeit they're not necessarily new units of housing, but taking an existing unit of housing and reserving it for affordability. So you're aware of this. The previous item you just talked about was our affordable homeownership land trust partnership with Habitat for Humanity. We created this program in 2021. There was a conscious pivot at that time to work towards the creation of affordable home ownership units, because prior to that, a lot of the city and EDA's efforts were on the creation of new affordable rental units. And so there was a very conscious effort that we need to look at ownership units. At that time, the EDA adopted some program guidelines, and one of those guidelines was we would do a maximum of 4 units per year. That has actually been realized since we created this program in 2021. It's actually very popular. I believe Habitat has been approached by other cities wanting to implement a program similar to ours. Interestingly enough, of all of the homes we've added to our trust, only one of those was acquired, and it was actually the only vacant lot we've done so far, was acquired off the open market. The rest of these were, sort of mission-driven sellers who found out about our program and contacted Habitat and wanted to sell to Habitat. Whether they were mission-driven or they just had a home in a situation where they didn't want to put the effort in that maybe their realtors were recommending to ready their home for the open market on the MLS. And so that's how most of these have come to be in our partnership, which we find very interesting and satisfying, that these are mission-driven sellers who want to put their home in this program. But it is expensive. The upfront costs for this program are expensive. But one thing we've kept in mind is the per year investment across a 99-year trust actually makes it much more affordable when you sort of right-size that initial $80,000 investment into the yearly cost across that 99-year lease. But having said that, homes in Roseville are expensive. Homes in general are expensive, and we found that additional gap funding has been needed beyond the EDA's investment just because our homes are expensive, and then a lot of these homes have rehab costs, and Habitat is taking that on. So this table here just sort of outlines the general guidelines, the funds that the RETA has put in, the amount of funds that other grants or partners have put in, which far exceeds the EDA's investment since we created the program in 2021. We've got 11 homes that have been sold to buyers, and we've got 6 already in the pipeline. And when we start talking about funds and budget, you'll note that most of the money we've set aside will be gone once the homes in the pipeline are finished off. This conversation was really about housing programs and how to continue funding housing programs. And because of that, we talk about all of the funds that are under the EDA's purview and what you can and can't do with those funds. And so there's a natural sort of conversation of, well, what else could we do with this money? So I didn't want to ignore that the EDA does engage in other things outside of housing programs. And so this slide attempts to just sort of outline what those are. We have the Grow Roseville Economic Development Marketing Program. This has an annual impact of $15,000, and that's all levy money. We do have a small business loan program that we've partnered with the Minnesota Consortium of Community Developers. This has had no levy impact since 2024. There are funds available to continue to do loans if we are approached. We have a SAC credit policy to assist small businesses, and we've done that a few times. And then we have probably our biggest tool, which is our public financing options, and we have a policy about how we will use that. There are, several different types of tax increment districts that we can create in order to do a variety of things in the city beyond affordable housing. The most recent one is one the city manager talked about for the upcoming EDA meeting, which is a pre-development agreement with Hyde Development, where we're using, hazardous substance subdistrict TIF in order to create a new 55,000 square foot building that will bring in 150 jobs plus to the community. And so these tools that the EDA has used have actually grown our tax base within those districts by over 1,000%. And I know our public finance consultant has presented to you on that in the past. And so I didn't want to overlook the efforts that the EDA engages in outside of housing. So here's sort of the funds and the money conversation. There are lots of funds that are managed by the EDA. The only funds that have current EDA levy support are 725. That's our operating fund. And then we've tried to sort of outline what funds originated through the HRA. Those are 720, 722, 723. Councilmember Bauer brought up Fund 724 in the prior conversation. Those are EDA, those were HRA originated funds. And so it's important to recognize this because, as I mentioned earlier, if they originated through the HRA, we can only use that money based on the powers that an HRA has, which are not the same as the powers that an EDA has. HRA powers are generally limited to housing and redevelopment. EDA powers branch off into business assistance. So that's the most general way to describe the differences, but I only bring that up because you couldn't take money in 724 and use it for business assistance, because that's not a power that the HRA has. The column on the right-hand side of this slide just attempts to illustrate for you how much money is available in these funds. But as I've said, and Jeannie mentioned too in her previous conversations with you, the money in 720 and 721 will be extinguished once those 6 homes that are in Habitat's pipeline are finished off. 722, we could certainly have a conversation. We maybe don't need $126,000 in that fund, but that's a fund that we use to pay for our property abatements. And you've had those in front of you many times. 723 is the primary fund that we use for our revolving loan, our senior deferred loan, and emergency deferred loan. And so a lot of money's going out, some money's coming back in. 724 is the fund with the most money. That's the multifamily fund that the HRA created. HRA started levying money for that. And Jeannie and I were looking into this going back to like 2005, all the way up until the HRA terminated its levy. The last year was 2014. And so that's how this money accumulated. The original intention for this fund was to provide loans to multifamily properties to help them deal with deferred maintenance or, distress that these aging multifamily properties have. Only one project was a taker for those loans, and that was Sienna Green, and that has since been paid off. And so the money has been sitting there accumulating interest. And as we mentioned previously, money from this fund was transferred to 723 back in 2023 to continue to be a source for the revolving loan fund. 725, as I mentioned, is our operating fund. The only money there is the energy efficiency programs. And then 726 is our small business loan fund, and 727 is Southeast Roseville, which is how we continue to pay our Rice and Larpenter partnership fees. So those are existing funds that we've had. This next slide talks about sort of this new LAHA funding. This is new funding that was created. We received our first payment in 2025. Again, it's proceeds from a sales tax created during the 23 legislature. Funds can be spent on emergency rental assistance, financial support to nonprofit affordable housing providers, affordable housing development and financing, distressed property operations and management, emergency shelter. And there is in the statute, this like catch-all of other, but it has to contribute to affordable housing creation and preservation, keeping families housed, and housing the homeless. So really the intention is to create, preserve affordable housing options and to provide emergency shelter. We received, and I apologize, we received some money in 2024. Our first full year of funding came in 2025, so we've got about $771,000 sitting in our LAHA fund. Funds must be committed within 3 years. So that's 2027 for our first sort of initial receipt of that $211,000 in 2024. And then we have to spend it by the end of the 4th year. Meanwhile, we're getting new money every year. So the numbers I put forward to you don't include anything that we're anticipated to receive in 2026. The other sort of complicating factor is funds cannot supplant existing affordable housing efforts, but they can supplement. And so that creates additional sort of complications for how we might be able to use it to fund an existing program. And so I just wanted to point out a couple of things with that is When we're talking about using LAHA for existing programs, we need to be mindful of whether or not that existing program has income restrictions, because lots of our programs do not have income restrictions. And if you want to use LAHA, you would have to then impose income restrictions. We also need to look at whether or not the funding level of what the funding level of that program is currently at and where you want to be in the future. That gets back to the supplanting versus supplementing. And then whether or not we're funding the program with levy, fund balance, or grants. And all of this is just things that we need to be mindful of, making sure when we're reporting on use of these funds annually that we're not going to be caught using them inappropriately, because if we are, we have to return the money. Staff has provided some conceptual ideas for how we might want to spend this money. It's attachment 6 of your packet. We weren't intending to get into a lot of details on that, because based on the conversation we had last month on the strategic plan, or last meeting on the strategic plan, we intend to create sort of a cross-department team to bring forward to you ideas on how we might want to spend LAHA funding. But if you have any ideas about those concepts, we're certainly willing to take that back to that group. Of course, anytime you create a new program, we need to complete the equity and inclusion toolkit, and we haven't done any of that for those concept programs we put forward. However, based on what has come up since January, eviction prevention seems to be something that we maybe need to do quicker and maybe don't have time to follow some of the other sort of protocols we might with the new programming. This need has arisen, obviously, due to the effects of Operation Metro Surge. We have updated, so if you remember the packet from January compared to what you see today, we've updated sort of the numbers for eviction prevention based on what we think we might need to address Operation Metro Surge. We do think we have plenty of money, LAHA money, available to fund a program. It's just figuring out how to do it. So the conceptual idea we put forward to you was to work with a nonprofit to administer it. We'd set aside about $60,000 a year for at least 2 years. We've outlined some maximum assistance per renter. We would have to income qualify because we're using LAHA money. And there are some administrative costs that come with using another person to do it, because our staff certainly is not qualified or capable of income qualifying and processing these loans. In your packet, we talked about using Neighborhood House. Back when Jeannie was originally working with Neighbor House in December and early January, they were willing to work with us. They've been less communicative with us since then, because like all nonprofits, they're just completely overwhelmed with need. And so Jeannie has been very agile and has pivoted, and this isn't in your packet because it just came up really late last week after the packet was published, but CEE, our partner, nonprofit, who's already administering all of our loan programs, could do a similar program, the same program, if we chose to move forward and wanted to move quickly. Interestingly enough, Neighborhood House would only provide eviction prevention for rental, not ownership. There very well could be a need on the ownership side too. I know, Mayor Rowe, you've brought that up, and CEE could accommodate that, whereas Neighborhood House could not. So depending on where you are with eviction prevention and what sort of direction you give us, that we feel like is probably a better option than Neighborhood House. But we would have to come back to you anyways with more details. And the other thing I want to note is it's going to take a little bit of time to get agreements in place in order to run these programs. And there are reporting requirements, and those things are all in place to protect against fraud. And so I know the community is very concerned about the urgency of this need, and we would move as quickly as possible. I've talked to the city attorney about, is there other money that we could just give to somebody to provide really urgent assistance? And she's really not excited about that, and we can explore that further if that's a conversation you want to have. But we think CEE eviction prevention, based on how we've outlined it, would be something we could put together relatively quickly. And there are some people in town that are providing assistance in a more timely fashion right now. I do want to note a lot of the EDA's housing programs and the use of LAHA align with our economic vitality strategic priority. I want to just remind you that goal number 2 states that housing types and programs are provided in a manner that contributes to the economic success for households at all income levels. And so we have several success indicators associated with this goal, and a lot of these programs have contributed to this strategic priority. I won't go into tons of details, but on the income side, the programs usually help people at or below 115% of the area median income for ownership and 80% of area median income for rental. Sometimes that goes even lower. We tend to target housing stock valued at or below Roseville's median valued home, which is $379,400. So we're not giving a low interest rate loan to a home worth $1 million. We're really focusing on a subset of our housing stock that's in need of help, where people maybe aren't as capable to go out to the open market and get a loan to do the work. So decisions to continue or discontinue these programs may have equity impacts if the private market can't take up where we leave off. Our existing programs promote housing stability, seniors who wish to remain in their homes longer, modernization of aging housing stock, affordability of critical repairs and emergency issues, and then first generation home ownership. And then again, we would complete the equity and inclusion toolkit to inform decision making if you want to create a new program. So what are we asking of you tonight? We've talked about a lot of different things, but really we would like some direction on our existing programs and how to continue to fund them, if you want to continue to fund them, and if you do, how. And so I'll go through each program and outline what our recommendation is, and then we can certainly ask questions. So the first one is the revolving loan program. We are recommending that you move $600,000 from Fund 724, that's the multifamily fund that has $1 million plus in it, to continue to offer revolving loans. We don't think LAHA funding is something that is reasonable here because this program does not have income restrictions. And if you want to impose income restrictions, we can certainly do that and explore LAHA, but we think that the program as it's currently working is very popular, and so we need to spend the money in 724, so we think this is a good source, and this is something the EDA has done most recently in 2023. Similar for the senior deferred loan, we would recommend you move $350,000 from Fund 724 in order to continue to do senior deferred loans. Again, if you wanted to use LAHA, we would have to impose income restrictions. Right now, we don't do that. We've sort of settled on $350,000 because we've already got about $650,000 of deferred loans out there, and having $1 million plus of deferred money out there seems a bit high, but certainly if you're willing to do something different, we're open to that. But I just wanted to state that's where we came up with the $350,000 number. And all of these recommendations are based on staff's belief that they will sustain the program for an additional 2 years plus without having any new levy support, which I think is obviously important given the levy pressures that the city is facing. The third option is, or the third recommendation is our emergency deferred program. Right now, that one is deferred, but they do have to pay it back at the sale or refinance of a home. We are recommending that this be forgiven over 10 years. The 2-year budget is $50,000. We think that is plenty of money. It will last more than 2 years. I think we've done 2 of these to date. And we think the forgiveness change is appropriate given we want to fund this with LAHA moving forward. And just based on the accounting and reporting requirements, if this is coming back and we're using LAHA and sending it back out, it's going to get real complicated quickly about whether or not we're meeting the timeline reporting spending requirements. The next program is our first generation down payment assistance. We want to, I'm sorry, thank you, Pat. We want to modify this program so that we can fund it moving forward with LAHA. And so the revisions in order to comply with LAHA would be lower income qualification from 100% AMI to 80% AMI, targeting those in most need of this program. We want to change the maximum loan amount. Right now we're at $25,000 and we want to change that to 10% of the purchase price of the home. So that, depending on the home, might increase it a little bit. We do want to require the buyer to have to come to closing with at least $1,000 cash. We don't have that right now, and we've seen buyers come to closings without any cash, and I think it's important that be added to this program. But then we would forgive the assistance over 20 years. Another change we want to make is you cannot stack it with Ramsey County's program, which is fairly lucrative, and again, we're trying to establish a 2-year budget. So a 2-year budget we think is about $160,000 of LAHA money. We want to make sure, given we don't have a ton of money to be doing this, that we're targeting those with most needs. And the county's program already provides up to $93,150 per program. So we feel like not allowing that to stack on top of ours would allow our program to target those that Ramsey County's program maybe is not needing. And then the second to last one, or the third to last one, is the manufactured home loan. We would recommend we just terminate this program. Nobody's utilized it, and not for a lack of trying. We've marketed this program multiple times to the occupants in the manufactured home park, and we have not originated any loans. We think partially it's because the county has a grant program, and that's obviously much more desirable than a loan. Secondly, in order to continue our community land trust partnership with Habitat for 2 years, we are recommending funding that from multiple different avenues. That previous item that the EDA just voted on was spending $197,000 of LAHA for the acquisition project. We would completely extinguish funds 720 and 721 to get through the homes that are in the pipeline. And then we would recommend, instead of doing 4 homes per year, we go down to 2 homes per year. So we're looking at $160,000 per year. For 2 years. To come up with that money, we're recommending we use about $95,000 from Fund 724, and then some existing fund balance in the EDA operating fund, 725, about $225,000. I do just want to make one comment. We do have some grant money that's reimbursable money out on the Land Trust Partnership, so it's possible we might not need all of that from 724 and 725, depending on when those homes close. Just because if we get some of the money reimbursed, some of the grant money reimbursed, it'll be there, but we wanted to just outline the worst case scenario with that. And then we would also recommend you continue the Home Advisor, Home Energy Squad, and Home Energy Audits, as well as a Sustainable Steward Award for the next 2 years in its current form, which is a levy impact of about $36,850. And then originally we weren't going to ask you for any direction on LAHA programming, but because of eviction prevention and Operation Metro Surge and the urgency behind that, we are sort of seeking one carve out for LAHA on that, which is whether or not you want to pursue an eviction program as we've conceptualized in Attachment 6 and described in this presentation. And if you are, we can bring something back as quickly as possible on that one and not wait for the strategic plan team to sort of have the broader conversation. So looking for direction on that. So I'm sorry, I probably talked way more than I should have, and you have lots of questions. So with that, I will try and answer them. And Jeannie is really sort of the day-to-day boots on the ground with these programs, and so she'll help me answer any questions as well.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gunlock. And I think, given the request from staff for the feedback and the direction on the eviction prevention program, perhaps we focus our conversation on that to begin with.
Sure.
As a board, and then kind of work through that, and then we can have the broader discussion of other things that we may want to talk about in relation to housing program funding. So let's, if we can, focus the questions at this time for staff on that eviction prevention program. Member Strawn.
Thank you. So in attachment 6, where you indicate the eviction prevention line item, so would the 10% admin fee be the same for CEE as it was predicted? No, higher. Okay, so potentially a little less impactful than indicated here.
So the admin fee to CEE would probably be higher than the 10% to neighborhood house. We don't believe that that's a problem in terms of the law allowing us to spend that money on admin, and we could get it set up a lot quicker than we could with neighborhood house, so we feel like that additional cost might be worth it just for that element of it.
Okay, and then, so this is looking at kind of a longer stretch, which obviously the need for eviction or foreclosure prevention doesn't go away in a month or 6 months. So this is a 2-year kind of estimation still in here?
Yes, Board Member Strong, the 132,000 was based on thinking we needed about 60,000 per year with an admin cost on top of that. I would say I'm not very concerned that we will or won't have enough money to fund eviction prevention based on what the need is. So if you're interested in a program, we will come back and try and come up with some better numbers on admin. But I think if we're funding it with LAHA, we've got plenty of money to do whatever the need will be, we think, just because we actually haven't been approached yet for anyone needing eviction.
I've had some people reach out to me and said, we
Good
don't
to know.
have anything set up yet. So, and I'm sure Carrie is back there is ready. Aren't you ready? She's ready. But I just want to make sure that we know, but we were talking about that mortgage assistance as well, if someone was late on the mortgage or other things as well. So not just eviction, but it actually feeds to the resolution that we had passed a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, the original sort of concept was just eviction prevention for renting, and that's what Neighborhood House could do. If we move to CEE, then we could deal with the ownership, the mortgage side of things. And again, if we needed more money than what we anticipate, we can come back to you and let you know what's happening with needs once a program, if you want to create one, is up and running, and what we're seeing in terms of requests.
Well, I'd be very much in support of the eviction prevention. We don't know what our need is or the duration of it, but I think that need doesn't go away. I mean, people always have that need, and if it's not this issue, there'll be some other, we had COVID and other things that people can't predict or plan for, so.
Great. Other questions on the eviction potential foreclosure prevention program? I did want to clarify too that is there a duration of assistance? Is it a one-time assistance, or is there some other time frame we're thinking about? Because if you just do the 60,000 divided by the 2,500, you get about 24, potentially 24 payments. Is that, like I said, a one-time thing, or how do we look at that?
We were envisioning a one-time thing, but we're open to whatever sort of parameters you're interested in, and then we can come back to you with that based on our conversations with CEE and or Neighborhood House.
And I think in addition to our own, housing folks, we also have the folks that were here earlier this evening from St. Michael's, as well as the Roseville Schools Foundation, as well as Mounds View, They're doing a program through their Ralph Reeder Food Shelf. And so I think all of those people can be sort of feeders into the program and helping us be informed about, the need. And I am imagining, based on their levels of funding, that they're providing, for the most part, one-time assistance. But it may be that they, if they have the funds available, if there's the need available, that they may be able to provide some additional assistance. But I think we would want to have that conversation too, how our program might work with other programs, and then, what kind of limits do we want to put on it, if any. Those are just thoughts I have. But I would be supportive of trying to move forward with something as quickly as possible, and to look at investigating the foreclosure side of it. Granted, the calendar is a little bit different for people who pay mortgages. Eviction is much more of sometimes an immediate concern, as opposed to foreclosure, which can take some time to work through a process. But it doesn't mean that there isn't potentially some of that need out there that we need to be concerned about, especially given the income qualification requirements that we would be talking about through the use of LAHA funds. Councilmember Groff, or Member Groff.
Part of the problem with foreclosure is that usually people are behind more than one payment by the time it gets into that part of it. So just something we'd have to be aware of and look at when we plan this. I would like to know how we would have, one time is great, but I don't think that people recover in 1 month from these situations. So I think we'd have to look at something that allowed more than 1 month, or maybe work with the other groups to see if something could be done to cover those more extended periods.
Member Bauer.
Are you envisioning a need or a requirement to demonstrate need for these programs? We've noted, okay, so both these, whether it's CEE or neighborhood house, would have something like that.
Yep, Board Member Bauer, in order to use LAHA, we have to be very conscious of meeting the requirements. So recipients will have to income qualify and demonstrate need. And so whether or not that's a letter from their landlord saying that they're late, or whether it's from their lender saying they're behind, the beauty of working with a third party like Neighborhood House or even CEE is those entities are equipped to do that and work with those owners and or renters to get the proper documentation to income qualify and demonstrate need.
And I think that is a requirement even for those other providers that are in the nonprofit sector, whether it's the foundations or the food shelf, that there's it may not be a legal requirement as relates to state statute as the LAHA funding is, but certainly it's a best practice anyway to make sure that funds are going to people who can demonstrate the need. Member Strong.
I just wanted to say anecdotally, and I'm sure Carrie can reiterate this, but as someone who worked with frontline care workers, and we offered up to $3,000 loans from our organization to our staff, oftentimes $2,500 was the thing that they needed to get through. There was a car, and there was a major medical issue. They had to put their dog down, and they were things that were unexpected. So it may not address a current situation with MetroCert, with everything going on here and the ICE surge, but there are a lot of times where $2,500 is the thing between them and stable housing. I'd have someone who was 6 months pregnant and they needed to take a loan so they could have enough money to put a down payment on the new place or whatever, and I'm like, okay, how long are you going to work for? But, had to kind of negotiate. But I think for so many people, that is enough to kind of, it's that close to the line, or they don't eat or whatever. So if they knew that was something they could do. So I still think it's beneficial. Is it helping people for a year? No. But is it helping them maybe just avoid this catastrophic loss of their place to stay? I think it can be still very beneficial, and had so many people thank me over time for giving them that one loan that they still had to pay back. If we were giving an opportunity for a grant or they didn't have to pay back, I really think it can still be beneficial and impactful to people.
Right. I do want to, before we make any decisions on the eviction prevention program and/or foreclosure prevention, provide an opportunity for public comment related to that specifically. So we'll open it up for public comment on that. And once again, the rules of the road for public comment stand as they have been through the evening here, which is a 3-minute time limit per speaker. We just ask that you begin your comments with your name and street or address to identify yourself, and direct comments or questions to the council, and 1 opportunity to speak per agenda item.
Are we splitting like the eviction immediate stuff and the like longer stuff into 2 items? Okay,
Correct.
cool.
Yep, and I will provide
perfect.
another opportunity for people to comment on that.
Great. I've got questions there too. Hi, Andy again. Still on over by Acorn Park. I was reading this packet that I didn't have before, and like in here on line 139, I guess it starts on 138, EDA staff has been working with the city's housing navigator in the police department, who has indicated that St. Michael's Church, coupled with Do Good Roseville, has acquired sufficient donations to address short-term immigration enforcement related needs. What? Can I see objective evidence of that? Like, is this notion that like there haven't been people calling to ask because they're locked in their houses and are not regularly participating in the city and like have no idea any of this exists? Or did they like go and talk to people and check it out? I mean, that's frankly not true, right? That's an absurd statement to have in this packet. And
I don't know that we know it's true or not, but we're not going to get into a debate on that. Continue with your comments.
Okay, so in my experience, I guess we'll say it's not true, and my experience is grounded in sort of reality that's around us. So I guess I see that super concerning. I like the overall conversation. I think it's good. I think it's wild that we're like looking to someone in the police department for this. Like, I'm a reasonably well-to-do white guy, and I don't like cops, so like I can't imagine what someone who's a frequent source of getting abused by various folks would feel about it. So I think that's like a tough thing to look to as well. I guess I wonder about what the means testing aspect of this looks like and like what the outreach looks like it is, because I think the biggest issue is just finding out that the people need the help, right? And so I guess I would be kind of inquiring if this group you're partnering with is able to do that outreach, or if we need to partner sort of more broadly with other members in the community, or if this is something where we're like, hey, send an email here, like sort of what are the tools I can have as like just some guy in the community to help usher people to these resources. That'd be really helpful for me. And then I think sort of you got at this, right? I hope it's for people with mortgages and rents. That'd be great. And I do think that you're kind of hitting on as well, you're just raising these points, like $2,500 is going to get you 2 months, 2.5 months, 3 months. I don't know. I've heard about like lot fees at mobile home communities, and they're a lot closer to my mortgage on my like shockingly large house than one might expect. I read a book called Evicted sometime in the middle of 2017 or something, and like private equity buys up these places and then ratchets up the prices because mobile homes, fun fact, are not mobile, right? In fact, honestly, why do we call them that, right? They're really just a stationary home that can't possibly move. So, I mean, it's like a uniquely vulnerable community. So yeah, mostly just like, awesome. I like that you're talking about it. It's good. We should do it. It's wild that this packet says the need's been met. I can't believe that. And I just, I like the open-ended nature of it. I think that's good. I think recognizing that people might be back a couple times, and like, whatever we can do to help people who are victims of frankly insane situation with the federal government, sort of hopefully cobble together what they can with their life and like come out on the other end. I mean, ideally still able to live in Roseville and like have a fulfilling life and sort of, experience their conception of the good in whatever way they can. So in favor. Please do it. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your comments. Other public comment on the proposed eviction and foreclosure assistance?
Hi, so Carrie Gelly again, 36 and Dale Street, and I pretty much second the previous speaker. And thank you to the team, to the folks who have been speaking and explaining this to us. Thank you for the work you're doing. And I agree, I support any creative brainstorming, problem solving that supports our targeted community members right now and prevents eviction, foreclosure, and other financial harms as a result of Operation Metro Surge. And I concur, I think $2,500 for one time, if that means we have $60,000 and it goes to 24 people, and I'm maybe not doing the math right, but I think we're going to have more than 24 people who will need this. And if people have been staying inside since December and not going to work, and we're almost at March now, that's multiple months of rent or mortgage payments, right? So again, thanks for the work. I do urge you to move as quickly as possible, make it as accessible as possible, make it your outreach multilingual, and I think we're going to need to do much more active outreach than we typically might do, and just having on the website, hey, we have these programs. I had a conversation with Jeannie a few months ago, and as someone who's lived in Roseville for 36 years, I didn't know a lot of these programs, and some of like the other ones that you're going to be talking about later, I kind of qualified for, but I needed like a sit down, like almost hour-long conversation to understand it. So anyway, just using myself as an example, I think for folks who are under trauma right now and maybe not as used to accessing city services, I think the outreach might need to be more robust. And it sounds like there are funds available to do this, and if you use LAHA or you shift other funds around, I just encourage you to think creatively and kind of outside the box to be doing those sorts of things. Move quickly, do more outreach, any of those sorts of things. I have to be volunteering in community early in the morning, so I'm going to leave and trust that you all do a great job tonight debating, motioning, voting, and all the things that you're going to do. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there other comments from members of the public related to the proposed eviction prevention program and foreclosure prevention? All right, we'll go ahead and close the opportunity for public comment. And I thank the commenters for their support of doing something along these lines and doing it quickly. And I think that's certainly the objective that I personally have. And I agree that outreach is going to have to potentially be different and more than what we might otherwise do on other programs. And so I think we've got some of that going, even with some of the outreach we did related to know your rights information and things like that we've been getting out into apartment communities and things like that. But that doesn't mean that that's the end all and be all and that we can't improve or move forward with more. I did want to just address, and this just may be something that members, not all members of the public are aware of, but the individuals who are in the police department who work with people on housing issues are not police officers, and they are located in that department primarily because that's where oftentimes need is encountered through interactions, and so that just seems to be, given that we're a city that doesn't provide a lot of social services otherwise, that seemed to be an appropriate place to house it. And we do also have 2 social workers, I believe it's 2, I'll make sure that's the right number, 2 social workers that are part of that group.
Total of 3.
3? Okay, right. Okay.
2 of them are here.
Okay. And so just wanted to clarify that point, so that if that helps at all in that regard. But it's certainly not police officers or uniformed people in that sense, although we do have officers who are part of the overall community action team who work together in the whole effort. But certainly that's the people that are doing those connections with people are the social workers and the housing navigators. The other thing I just wanted to note, in terms of what we might have heard from the folks at St. Michael's may have been, as I read it, was that they, up to that point, had received enough support from the community to provide the support that people had come to them for. I don't think that was at all meant to be a characterization that the need is gone and everything's done and we're done. That's not at all how I had interpreted it, so just to clarify that point as well. Other thoughts from council members? I think Councilmember Bauer, did you?
I was just going to note that, building on what you said, the large amount of success that we've had with the CAT team over many years and really addressing so many different needs. I think their position within the police department, the way that they go about their work, and their interactions with the community along with the police has been just stellar. And in fact, something that other cities are, I would think, envious of.
Councilmember or Member Strawn.
I don't think this is going to be something that you're going to put out on the website for every person. It's going to be a passive thing that will be filled by the people who need to know about it. And I was curious to know if our housing navigator had anything to add to this conversation, knowing that you're the person in the streets every day. Did you have anything that you wanted us or the people in the public to know about this?
No pressure.
Yeah, no
But-
problem.
But you do have to come up to the microphone so that it goes to the folks at home. Unfortunately, we got to get you in the public spotlight here.
I just have to say the need's there. The need's there. And we are partnering with St. Michael's right now, doing the best we can. And the requests are coming in a lot and strong and fast. And we're doing the best we can. And this would definitely help. And it's not going to go away when Metro Surge goes away. This has been going on long before that. So we are doing what we can, and this would definitely help a lot of people.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Karen.
All right. Board discussion about the program. Certainly my thought is that we get it started. It seems to make sense to partner with CEE. They do the income qualification. They're used to do that. And I think that the because of the requirement for income qualification through the use of LAHA funds, that's one thing, but I also understand that there's a high correlation between being in that 80% AMI or lower income area and the challenge to make those, keep up with those payments, whereas it's maybe a little less of a challenge as you get above that, but it doesn't mean that it isn't still a challenge, and I think we recognize that as well. So food for thought, but I think we would like to have a motion probably to get the discussion going.
I would move
Second.
to proceed.
All right,
Second.
all right, so that's.
Yeah, second a motion to move forward with eviction prevention.
Yep. And that's as outlined with the understanding that we can amend
Yes.
and modify as we go forward. And potentially, I think it'll probably have to come back for potentially further decisions to enter into the agreement with CE and those sorts of things, which we can schedule special EDA meetings if we need to do those sorts of things. All right, we've got the motion before us. As the maker of the motion, Member Groff.
I think this is a good step forward. It's a complicated process. I think having CE do the qualifications is really a good move because we want to do this correctly. We want to use the LAHA funds correctly. So everything in the outline is done correctly and done well, in my opinion. I look forward to seeing the details when they come forward.
As the seconder, Member Strong.
Nothing further.
Other discussion on the motion? And I did want to just clarify with the maker and seconder of the motion. It wasn't explicit in the program description in the materials as to foreclosure prevention. Did you want to specifically include that in the motion at this time, at least to explore it?
I would like to.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that so we know what we're voting on and the staff knows what
Yeah.
they're going to be taking a look at. All right, with that then, we've got the motion before us. Does that change the need for any further discussion, just to be sure? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously 4-0. That program is approved to get underway in the planning and development, and hopefully we can get it underway sooner than later. All right, now back to the broader discussion. This is an opportunity, returning back to the board discussion, if there are questions for staff at this time, and we'll proceed through that process and then more public comment. Member Bauer.
Thank you for pulling all this together. Really the conversation that I was hoping for us to have, at least on the housing side. Look forward to later in the year having a conversation about the business side of it, which is a whole other thing. I will say then going through all of this, maybe a request going forward, and I'm happy to work with you on this, is the presentation of this in a little bit different format, corresponding between what the funds are, the programs that they're involved in, the cash balances before and after the original amounts, also then like what we've actually done in each of those programs and what each of those you have as budgeted. Able to kind of do it by piecing together multiple slides of yours, but that would allow me to see in a better picture of like what is the health of the EDA right now, because looking at the actual fund is one thing, but then knowing which actual program is pulling from which particular fund is important. Also knowing and being able to see what is, and some of these funds are restricted, as you mentioned with HRA, either wholly or like portions of them, I believe. To be able to see that would definitely help out and help me understand the overall health of EDA and what it's actually moving. Also be able to see with these movements that you're suggesting, what is the after effect of all those different funds in those accounts, so we can see like, okay, if we do take this action and do this, this is what we'll end up with, and this is what it will look like. Again, able to do it kind of on my own, but it'd be nice to have you do it because you actually have more of the raw data versus me just pointing it off the slides. And I'm more than happy to kind of come in and assist with that. So just maybe an ask for next time. With the movement of 724 funds that you're talking about, would that end up zeroing out the 724 account? It looks like it's pretty close.
Pretty close. I don't think it's every dollar, but nearly.
I would be, I'd be comfortable with zeroing out that 724 account and discontinuing that. Or, I guess you don't discontinue the account, but like just zero out that account. I think that's a possibility.
It certainly doesn't seem like a program that the marketplace is looking to take advantage of. We have done the one with Sienna Green, and there's so many other different funding sources out there for those in the multifamily area for their rehabilitation and things like that, it just doesn't seem to be something that people are taking advantage of. And when it was envisioned back in the early 2000s, it may have made some sense, but clearly it didn't make that much sense because it hasn't been too much taken advantage of.
And then regarding the move that you're talking about doing, specifically using some of the LAHA funds for the first-gen down payment assistance, I do have a concern if those LAHA funds you have to be 80% EMI qualified for. No?
Not on homeownership.
Oh, okay.
Homeownership, you can go up to 115%. The priority is 80% or less AMI.
Okay, and then what the medium value of the home is up to what?
We choose the median value of the house, meaning every year the median value is based upon Roseville's median. We give it a median value plus 110%. So right now it's about $420,000.
So it's 110%.
110%.
And that's dictated by LAHA as well?
No,
Or no, we dictate that?
We dictate that valuation just because of the fact what affordability is usually won't get you above that.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know because I would hate for us to move these funds into this program and then not be able to it be utilized either because we don't have homes at that price point or we can't have buyers because they don't qualify for that. Just making sure we balance like homes are this price and you're at this and there's just no way you can get even with this program a conventional loan or any kind of loan to make up that difference. And then when we're talking about the LAHA funds, one of the things that looking at with Minnesota Housing and the attorney's memo also states this, other qualifying programs. I would like us to kind of explore that a little bit more too. Roseville, we got a real, an aging population, very interested in aging in place. I'd be very interested in us providing maybe like $5,000 grants to seniors. So again, seniors would be most likely 8% AMI to make improvements to their homes so they can be able to live in place or stay in place. And I'd be curious to, throw that to Minnesota Housing and to see what that would do because that would help maintain those homes, help maintain those people to stay within. Their move to assisted living or something else would be significantly more expensive. And so I would be curious to get staff's thoughts about investigating programs such as these.
So I think I have a couple of responses to that question. And the first one would be, we'll definitely take that feedback to the cross-department team that the strategic plan has allotted to explore how to program LAHA. But also attachment 6 outlines a program Jeannie has looked into called Help at Your Door. That is an existing nonprofit organization that provides essentially grants to seniors. I'm not sure the way their existing program is set up as a grant, but the way we have envisioned setting it up, it would be a grant to seniors where they would bring a contractor in the home to help them do something that they need done that they don't have capabilities to do. That would be a LAHA qualified use. We would have to income qualify, but that is one program Jeannie has worked on to help seniors age in place in their homes.
Yeah, so something very much like that. I mean, obviously, we would have to work with another part, just like with CE that we talked about just previously. We'll have to work with somebody. And so that sounds great. And I'd be very interested in, hearing more about that and funding that significantly with LAHA dollars.
So what was the idea of this is that I've gotten phone calls from seniors in their homes, and sometimes they need help changing a light bulb. and they can't because they can't get on a ladder. And that's what I was made aware of, this organization who can do it at a cost-effective means, minimum price though. And that was an opportunity for us to bring this forward to you, that there was other things too, maybe handicap, making their homes handicap
That's exactly what
accessible,
I was
right?
thinking.
Or other modifications. Maybe they're in code compliance as it relates to a board on the face of the house has fallen off. Minor improvements of that nature can be done underneath that program. They do offer other things, but we were not looking at any of the other services they provide. It would just be the handyman services that they would do. And they would be able to income qualify because they currently have to income qualify. The difference is the individuals would not have to pay for their services unless they're over that income, then they would pay that nonprofit directly.
And this nonprofit uses other contractors, or they do the work themselves?
They actually do find the contractors and bring them in for whatever the services are, depending on what those services needs are.
I have more questions, but I'll let others ask.
Okay, and just to be clear, so that program is a kind of a small-scale project program as opposed to something like a $5,000 grant for something more substantial. So-
You can determine how much you want to provide up.
No, I'm just saying that what was envisioned here
Right.
was much more smaller scale.
Yes, unless if it's something like putting in grab bars in a ramp or something else like that, it could get up to $5,000. So again, it's related to how much, and I think it's supposed to come back to the strategic plan group to discuss.
Right, I'm just noting that it was a $6,000 budget per year, which
Correct.
would not
Oh, no.
do too many $5,000 programs. Yeah, okay. And I did want to just note that Help at Your Door is an organization that at one time was headquartered in Roseville, and I got to know them through that process, and they do a lot of services related to people that who can't get out of their home in terms of shopping and things like that. So it's actually a good organization in that regard, and seems to be a good fit for those services. And unfortunately, for some reason, they decided to move to Golden Valley, but we won't hold that against them. Was it Councilmember Strawn or Member Strawn?
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, I'm a little. There's a lot of folks. There's a lot of access for through Senior Linkage Line and other senior resources. So I don't know if we want to coordinate with some of the state programs or just I still think it's a great idea, but it's a small piece, and I'm just wondering, there may be some other services that people could tap into, especially seniors, in some other. Gosh, if Sarah Barcel doesn't know what it is, it probably doesn't exist. But, just wanting to make sure, obviously, it's great to have services, but it'd be really nice if we kind of tapped into existing systems and kind of paired with those if we could, instead of recreating our own kind of thing. So that's what came to mind.
Well, and very clearly, we're talking about housing assistance at this point, too.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about putting in grab bars and things
Right,
like that.
which is housing related, yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to just check in again, because I believe I brought this topic up earlier in a prior discussion about potential LAHA funds back when it was still a gleam in the legislature's eye. And that was, one of the things that we pivoted on. At the same time, we pivoted from a lot of support for, say, 50 to 80% AMI rental to affordable housing. We also talked about, or affordable home ownership, I should say. We also talked about looking at ways to try to, lift up and support those deeply affordable rental or multifamily projects. And one of the things that, is a challenge for those is providing the supportive services that kind of go with that. And I'm not sure that that's qualified under what LAHA can
It
do.
is qualified.
But I also remember that it was usually a pretty significant sum of money as well. And so I don't know, I would hate if our total allotment wasn't enough to do anything in that regard, but if there was something we could do, I know we're still looking at, unbudgeted sort of, whatever, I can't find where it was, but a couple $100,000 or more, that, potentially that's something we could look at. But I was curious if I'm right in recollecting that it's a pretty significant amount per project and we may not be able to get much for it, or if I'm wrong about that.
I know the
Or if you can answer.
I don't know that I can answer it. I know the supportive services is an expensive element to some of these projects. The LAHA qualified uses does include supportive services. We actually haven't been approached by a developer to build a deeply affordable project in Roseville, at least recently, that would include supportive services, just because we're not positioned right for them to get all of the other resources on the scoring applications for that. But there are organizations that multifamily owners could contract with to provide those services.
Currently, the deeply affordable units that have been incorporated in our last developments that did get tax credits for doing this, they get resources for those nonprofits to provide those services within their units. They have to contract with them, and they get money in return from Minnesota Housing to pay for it.
Okay. So it may not be a need per se that we.
It would have to be somebody who works within already affordable housing, providing affordable housing, who knows how to work with those nonprofits.
Okay, so you're not saying it's not necessarily a need in the area, but rather that it has to coordinate well with whatever the project is doing. Okay.
And one thing I just wanted to note too for the council EDA, we're asking the strategic planning team to sort of brainstorm on how to program LAHA. Obviously, eviction prevention is something of more dire, urgent need, which you recommended us explore. But something could come up that team didn't envision, that we didn't envision. We can still bring that forward to you and at that time, and you can still make a decision of, does this make sense? Do we have the money, given all of the other programs and or monies we have for those programs? Is it available? So please don't feel like there won't be opportunities to do something outside whatever programs we envision and create, because there will be. Jeannie gets those calls. We'll bring them forward. Maybe Carrie and Jeannie talk on a regular basis. If something comes up, we'll definitely bring it forward if we think it makes a lot of sense and it's not covered under an existing program.
Member Groff.
I think the first question is pretty easy. I just need to know the details because that's the way my mind works. How do we know when a home is sold that use the senior program? Is there a lien on the property so that we're paid off, that it goes back into our fund?
Correct. That's why right now it is a loan with a mortgage, but it's deferred.
Yeah.
And then once it sells, title has that recorded, and then we're repaid. We have not had one yet, those sell.
I know, I noticed that. That's why I was wondering. And then the other question I had was, under the first generation down payment assistance, why would a buyer use our program rather than the Ramsey County program?
They run out of money
Availability
very
of funds.
fast because of the fact that suburban Ramsey County is all competing for those funds. And normally they're out of those funds by June of every year. However, I do want to clarify something. Ramsey County also does have regular down payment assistance that is a separate pool from the first generation. That doesn't mean that people couldn't combine our program with that amount. It's just a way lesser amount to put those together. We were just saying the first generation two should not go together because that is well over $120,000 that somebody would be having.
As opposed to spreading it amongst more people.
Correct, because we ran
Assist
out
more
of funds as well, and then Ramsey County runs out of funds, and then now we're not able to help anyone.
Right. Sure. The last half of the year, nobody has an option.
I did have one very quick thing. So one of the funds, and I can't remember which number it is, but that was primarily, I think, originated through CDBG funds. Is that just not something that cities and or Roseville get anymore?
So those are old funds from actually Ramsey County a long time ago, that when they used to award funds to a project in a city, the funds went back to the city to have. And so we have utilized a lot of those funds, such as we've probably had well close to $1 million that we've allocated some funds to. Sienna Green got some of those funds. We've also allocated some of those to acquire a home that Habitat ended up, that we donated to them. And then there's other various funds. So there's some existing CDBG loans existing out there still that were done pre-old, these are old agreements. When they come back to us. Right. However, many of those that were out there that were in the senior, Park Villa was one of them, that had a lot of CDBG. It no longer has any loans left there. However, we do have some homes over in Applewood Point that have CDBG funds still on them.
But I guess my question is, so as I understood it, and maybe I'm wrong about this, CDBG funds were originally federal funds that came to the localities.
To
So-
Ramsey County.
Right.
Then we applied to them.
Right. And so I guess my question is that just not a source of funding that's even out there anymore?
To the cities, it's never been in Ramsey County.
Okay.
However, Ramsey County still
They
gets
still get it, they just,
Still, at this point, they're still getting CDBG.
okay, but they're using it for their programs.
No, you actually apply for it, and we can apply for it on for programs and projects.
Got it. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. It seemed like that was something that wasn't something we were regularly seeing necessarily as a new income source to the city per se, but it sounds like it's something you apply for specific programs in specific situations.
And now when they're repaid, it goes back to Ramsey County.
Got it. Okay, that helps clarify it. Okay, thank you. All right, I have another question, but I'll defer.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, the only thing was on this is kind of along the lines of Member Bauer's request, is on the abatement fund specifically, can we look at sort of like on an annual basis or a 3-year look back, kind of what the ins and outs have been and you know what that's meant for the fund balance? Because we could certainly look at if we need to keep that at the 122,000 or whatever it is or not. And I know that those funds are repaid when people ultimately, through their property taxes or whatever, pay their abatement costs. So I was just curious about that, as with some of these other ones, just understanding sort of what the churn is in the account.
Yeah, we can definitely take a look at, the last 3 years. What did we spend on abatements? It's hard because when abatements are ordered, sometimes they do actually pay the invoice.
Mm-hmm.
So we never actually have to pay any money out of this account. But we'll see what we can come up with, like on 3 years, about what came out of that account.
And
versus
I
what
picked 3 years kind of randomly, but whatever it makes sense to kind of look at.
And we do think there's probably more money in there that needs to be in there. The largest abatement we do these days is maybe $5,000 if it's a really bad situation. Having said that, we do have at least one home in the city on Fairview that's been condemned since way before I got here, that neighborhood has constantly been asking the city to demo. We've sort of taken the position that that's maybe a bridge too far on the use of abatement, demoing a home that's been condemned, because if those homes fall into foreclosure and those are recorded against the taxes, there's not always a guarantee we're going to get our money back. And so losing out on a junk car for a couple $100 is one thing, but a $20,000 demolition on a condemned home, that's something different. So those are the things we sort of evaluate and what we think the right amount of money is on that fund. But we'll come back. We'll look at the
It might
history.
be worth having that conversation about that policy decision as well with the board too. One never knows what the point of view may newly be on that. And I don't either. So I think, Member Bauer, you had some things you wanted to return back to that you had
Just a
additional
couple more
questions.
questions.
Okay.
And I know it's getting late. 725, the balance on that is quite large. Are you concerned at all about that that balance? Does some of that need to be moved out or looked at as well? We were just talking about the abatement, but that's well above like what our normal cash reserves would be. You don't have to answer that now, but like coming back, I'd be curious to know because that amount is larger than our normal, what we normally have for like putting into the reserves.
So just to note, I did ask that question of
Oh, you
staff
did?
earlier, and they pointed out to me that it is on page 7 of 8, and also in the presentation, that for the land trust funding, there's about $226,000 coming out of 725 to fund that.
Right, which goes back to my whole thing earlier. That's why it's important that we can actually have a document that actually shows this because, again, that's where I was confused. So
maybe a sand key graphic.
A sand key would be fantastic on this diagram.
I just learned about those from Member Bauer not too long ago.
The sand key, I'll have to look that up. I will say, based on, closing the 25 books, updating all the balances for this conversation compared to where we were at in January with that initial report, and based on the recommendations made by staff for the funding our existing programs for the next 2 years, using $100,000 of reserves, and maintaining the, 35% of our operating in reserves, we're basically spending everything except about $120,000. So we have made a recommendation that has been conscious enough to draw that down as much as we can.
Right.
And we have lowered the levy every year since 2019 to try and get our arms around why that has been growing, so it's not growing. So we don't think that fund balance is growing anymore, so we're not expecting huge fund balances in these next years based on the cuts that we've been making since 2019.
Right. Yeah, I would just say that it's still $120,000 above
Yep.
what our 35% is for all of our other accounts in the city.
Yep.
I guess I forgot what my next question was, so I'll pass the torch.
I think, Member Strawn, did you have other questions?
I mean, looking in your attachment 7, your staff recommendations, what, I think a lot of these seem like they make sense, but I agree there's a lot of moving parts. And so what is it that you need from us in moving to the next phase of your decisions and your plans?
So, members of the board, I think that the two sort of big things we're looking for is, do you want to continue the revolving loan and the senior deferred loan? Do you want to continue those programs? They are running out of money. If you want to continue those programs, how they're currently in place, so no income restrictions, can't use LAHA, in order to continue to fund those for the next 2 years, we would like you to allow us to move $600,000 from Fund 724 so that we can continue to do revolving loans with CEE. And then with the senior deferred, we would like you to allow us to move $350,000 from 724 to continue to do senior deferred loans. So that's, nearly $1 million right there. $950,000 for those two programs.
And what's the timing that decision needs to be made?
Well, I mean, there's really no urgency as long as you're okay with people coming to us and us saying we don't have any money, you'll have to wait until a decision is made about refunding. There's no urgency. CEE is.
So when are the funds exhausted that are there now?
So
Or are they already?
currently, based upon where our budget is with them, they only had, and I think you had that in one of the slides, there's only a few amount left in order to do a few more loans, like maybe 3 more loans up to the maximum of 40,000. And that is if somebody didn't come in this last month that I haven't been informed about, because what they do is we give them the budget, they earmark it, the people go out, get their bids, they close, then that money is drawn down out of the budget, and then I have what is the real number of it. So I would say right now, currently, we have expended those funds based upon what they have in the pipeline.
For revolving loan, we still have a little bit of budget on senior deferred, but that could be gone with
$35,000.
Yep, that could be gone with 1 or 2 additional requests, depending on if they're using the maximum amount.
Okay. That helps.
And then I would also note, to address that question, the third item that isn't necessarily urgent, but the Community Land Trust Partnership. If you want to continue to allow Habitat to work with people who want to sell them their homes, we're out of money based on the homes that are in the pipeline. So if you want to continue to do 2 a year for the next 2 years, we're going to need some money, and we have recommended about $95,000 from 724, the rest of that money, and then $225,000 from 725 fund balance.
I know Habitat would like to know sooner than later, because they have a home right now that somebody is asking for them to buy from them from their estate.
All right. So if that kind of concludes the questions from the council, I do want to provide an opportunity again for public comment on more of this broader topic. We've had folks patiently waiting to be able to do that.
Interesting. I'm having fun. Don't worry.
But we also have our 10 o'clock curfew coming up.
Oh, you've got a curfew? Oh my gosh. I don't want to get on the city council then. I don't want to have to go home. Hello, Andy again. Still here. So sorry, you're not you are the president in the moment. Sorry, you've taken off one hat and put on other hats,
Exactly.
and you're all board members now, right?
Correct.
Okay, we'll get there. So
we can't even get it right. So we can't expect you to.
I just got the one hat, some guy. Anyway, so President Rowe, you said like as a city we don't provide that many social services, and that's like why we're putting stuff in the police department. I guess I just would say I think that's like kind of tragic. And then on that front, I think the community action team, like, they were out picking up nails on my street, which is delightful. I appreciated it. But them being in cop cars and in cop uniforms, I think they would have more success as like a city employee with a clipboard and like a high vis vest. It's kind of an aside. The thing that's sticking with me here is like I see all these different accounts, and then Board Member Bauer, you also are struggling with this, and you know way more than me, and you want like the Sankey chart or whatever. So like, forgive me, I'm probably messing up, and I'm probably wrong, and I'll go read more. It's interesting. It seems as though like we have money sitting in accounts collecting interest, right? The comment was like it's in there getting interest, but like, are you guys investing in like beating in the inflation rate? Like, surely not, right? Like, I guess like just in general, I would think we would want to like maintain the minimums you have to maintain, but like get the money out of these accounts into doing like anything. And the sort of discussion about like the deeply affordable housing and like all of the hoops and whether we're appealing or whatever, like if there's anything we could do to be more appealing to get deeply affordable housing, that seems really, really good. And like that would be an awesome priority. And then like there's a lot of discussion about how we're like cutting levies and not funding stuff. And like there's probably other programs I don't appreciate. And if someone could give me a 30-second blurb about it, like, are we doing affordable housing in other places? And like this is just like an aside, and like that's why we're cutting all of the levies and like not putting money there, And then at the same time, we're talking about how we're going to go from doing 4 houses to 2 houses in this Habitat for Humanity thing. I was just listening to a piece on like Bernie Sanders' Burlington or whatever, and like land trusts are like this massive tool that they're using, and it's like, I'm so excited to see you guys doing it. I was asking about them in my group chat, and people are like, yeah, they do it through Habitat for Humanity, and like people are like trying to do like a charitable thing by like hooking people up with a house in their estate because they want to do a good thing and they don't want it to go to private equity or whatever. They're not trying to maximize their returns. Get the money there to pick that up. There's just no reason to leave that on the table. The land trust habitat, like 4 to 2, why not 4 to 6? Why not 4 to 10? I don't know. Like at the end of the day, that truly, and the way things seem to work out, this is the answer, right? The city owns the land and does the 99-year lease, and you cap the profit when you sell. I don't know the actual logistics. There's a million different ways to skin the cat, but like, surely this is the tool, right? Like it just seems like, that part in particular, gosh, what a great program. It's a real shame if it's going from 4 to 2. Let's shuffle money in there. Tax me harder and make it go up to 6 or something. That seems really good. So I think that was the main one that jumped out at me is like, well, the land trust Habitat for Humanity thing should be going up. It just seems like a really great program. And that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your comments. We'll check if there's anybody else from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening. No? All right. We'll close the public comment. And once again, I don't know if council members had additional comments or questions, but certainly the idea here is that we probably do need to provide some guidance on those 3 areas, the revolving loan fund, the senior deferred loan, and the community land trust, to keep those going, at least, for the foreseeable future, and then some of the other discussions would be coming back. So thoughts from the council or the board. Member Bauer.
Regarding I'm in favor of keeping the revolving loan and senior deferred loan programs going, especially with the movement of funds from 724 into those. I like that they're, the qualifications that they have, their loans that are going towards houses on the open market, or can be used for that, along with other homes. So I'm definitely in favor of doing that. I would like to see more of the LAHA dollars being allocated towards, having seniors age in place, significantly more than what is listed here. I don't know what other council members feel there, but I feel like maintaining such a large population for us, I think that'd be a good use. These are people that have already paid into or they paid their taxes, and it's a way for them to get their money back and improve their housing stock and be able to age in place and continuing to stay in their homes that they care so deeply about. And then there was a third one then.
So it's the land trust, revolving loan, and
Oh,
senior
and
deferred loan.
Yes, in the land trust. I think keeping the land trust going, I'm in favor of moving it from 4 to 2 as well. It's important to note we're not just talking about there's just all this money out there. This money comes from people that live here in Roseville. We tax them. Some people have jobs. Some people here are on fixed incomes. Some people can be taxed out of their homes. So it's much more of a complicated question than just doing that. Additionally, Roseville has, compared to the rest of the Met Council area, has already done significantly more affordable housing over the past number of years than pretty much almost any place I can think of. And so we're heavy on that side, and so we are in a definite need for more market rate housing. There's some filtering problems that we have in Roseville. People turn over houses. So going from 4 to 2, I think, makes sense there as well. We can always increase it again later. So I'm in favor of staff's recommendation in that regard.
Just in that one, I think I need to hear back from staff again on the reasoning behind the change from 4 to 2 because
It's
I
6
wasn't.
to 2, correct? It's 4.
No, it's 4 to 2, but there are 6
Okay.
homes currently in the pipeline. That's maybe where
Okay.
the 6 came from.
Okay.
Yep, there's 6 homes currently in the pipeline. Based on the homes that we've done so far, we've maxed out at 4 per year. Because the initial investment is $80,000, that is expensive. When you talk about the EDA levy is $367,000. Last year was only 200. This year is only 267,000. We are recommending to go from 4 to 2, just because if we're proposing that we spend all of the money in 724 on revolving loan and senior deferred, and then the habitat acquisition, which is a little different. Going from 4 to 2 is a little bit more sustainable financially. Habitat is very busy, and being able to keep up with all the requests,
Capacity issue.
it's a bandwidth issue. We have concerns there too. The other thing is, I think we need to move towards funding our community land trust partnership with LAHA. And I have concerns about being in a position of supplanting versus supplementing. We cannot replace our funding with LAHA funding and then cut the program. So I want to get to something that's more sustainable long-term to fund with LAHA, and 2 a year at 160,000 is a better number. If we move entirely to LAHA and get off of all of our other money and then find that we have a capacity to do more than 2 a year based on how we've programmed all of our other LAHA money and how Habitat is dealing with their bandwidth and ability to do it, we can certainly come back and ask you if you'd like to do more than 2 a year. But we think 2 a year is more sustainable based on the financial position that we're in with the money that we have available and our partnership with Habitat.
I also want to note that that means that they can still budget to acquire 2 a year. If they're doing that, a lot of times they're stacking up. By the time they acquire a home, it's 3 years before it turns around and sells, usually to an individual because of their rehab and where it is in their timeline for any rehab that might need to be done. So it's anywhere from a 2 to 3 year process by the time we get a permanent owner in that house.
Thank you for helping to clarify that. Member Strawn.
So I'm curious on the senior deferred loan. Do we know how many of the folks who have been utilizing that would have been income qualified?
No, we don't at this point. However, they are in very modest homes, and that's why we made the program targeted to the modest homes in our community. Many of them, I can tell you, have done it. First of all, they have to have an inspection done of the home. They cannot do remodeling of the home. It has to, primary purpose is to sustain the home. So like a roof needs to be done, or there's other issues going on before they can use it for remodeling. So it's all about sustaining the home and maintaining the home at a proper level.
So would it be possible to alter that or cease what we have and start something that was income qualified so that it fit the LAHA requirements?
Yes.
But then we would say that it would no longer be a deferred loan. It'd be a forgiven loan over a period of time.
Okay.
The recommendation would be any changes that we make to our existing program, CEE would like to make it a forgiving over a period of time, especially if using LAHA, because if we reincorporate it in, now we have this problem of, do we have to spend it in the 3 years of getting it? Because there's no clarity on that yet.
Okay.
So the ask is pretty much what's been proposed here for those 3 programs, to keep them going for the next 2 years as outlined. Member Graff.
I would support the ask that you've done. I think you've done a lot of research here. I think as you've said, Ms. Gunlock, these can be changed over time. So I think we should proceed with it as requested and then reevaluate in 6 months.
Is that your motion?
Second.
All right, that's where I was headed. All right.
Or we're not
Graff
going
moves.
to reevaluate in 6 months, right? I mean, it's coming back at.
Well, we could reevaluate it at any point.
Reevaluate at any time.
So,
You
Member
want to have
Graff,
some history on some of them before you do it.
there are 7 recommendations. Are you
No, it's
taking
the revolving loan,
Okay.
the senior deferred loan, and the land trust.
Community Land Trust?
As outlined in the recommendations.
So that's 600,000 from Fund 724 to revolving loan, 350,000 from 724 to senior deferred, and then there were 2 different pots of money that we would go to the community land trust. About 90, the balance, what's left in 724, so about 94,000 from 724 to CLT, and then 225,700 from 725 cash balance to community land
It's
trust.
the operating fund.
Yep. That's what I think I understood.
And that would bring you to the balance.
That would extinguish everything in Fund 724, and it would get our EDA operating fund down significantly. To Councilmember Bauer's comment, we'd still be 120,000 about over our target, but
Target minimum.
yep.
Above minimum, yeah.
Okay.
And then we still have the conversation still of what to do with the LAHA funds.
Yes, our intention was never to get a formal recommendation from you tonight on LAHA programming. We're going to bring that back after the strategic planning team has done their work, with the exception of eviction prevention, which you've already provided guidance to us on earlier.
In the motion that passed previous to this.
Yep. Yes.
All right. Discussion on the motion. As the maker of the motion, Member Groff.
I think it's been discussed enough.
All right. As the seconder, Member Strawn.
No, I really appreciate all these things. I'm just wondering, did you get what you needed on the first gen manufactured loan and energy squad information?
I'm not worried about the home energy squad. There was still some money in there last year, and then we've re-upped on a new budget cycle. With first gen, we're out of money for that. But there's no urgency. We can come back. We were making recommendations to use LAHA to fund it. So we'll bring that to the strategic planning team and come back to you with that.
And then the manufactured home loan, do you need a?
Well, there's.
Our recommendation was to discontinue it. Nobody's asking for any of those. So if you don't want to formally discontinue it at this time, we can bring that
And
back.
where's that funded out of?
723.
Right. So.
And it's currently sitting there, not being able to utilize, and it's being budgeted by
budget.
CEE.
Right.
So they
Right.
keep a line item, that money is in that reserve.
So, to be clear, maybe we should add that direction to the motion to agree to stop that program.
Okay.
Is
Yeah,
there any
we can
objection?
amend that.
No objection.
Second.
No objection. So that is the amended motion that's still before us with that change. We've been in discussion. Is there further discussion on the motion? All right. Given that there isn't any further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. That passes unanimously 4-0, and those directions are provided. I believe that brings us to the end of our discussion this evening for the Economic Development Authority. There being no further business, the only thing left on our agenda is the motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, second by Councilmember Groff to adjourn. No discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That passes unanimously. We're adjourned at 9:51 p.m. Thank you, everyone.